Chapter 360. The original culprit of the tragedy. Thud, thud, thud. It seemed that the mention of the words Heavenly Doctor from Li Fan's mouth thoroughly triggered the emotions of the twisted monster. It forcefully banged its head against the ground repeatedly, creating cracks in the hard, desolate earth. At the same time, it continuously emitted intermittent sobbing sounds, with blood tears streaming down its face. Despite the monster's repulsive appearance, this scene unexpectedly made Li Fan feel a strange sense of pity for it. Did the Heavenly Doctor really commit the massacre here? In an instant, an image of a kind, neighborly old man surfaced in Li Fan's mind. On the surface, he appeared benevolent and kind, with a smiling face, but his actions were horrifying. Li Fan felt a shiver of fear. He recalled the scene in the Yunshui Celestial Palace when the Qin Hall members howled in anger upon seeing the statue of the Heavenly Doctor. It seemed that the fall of the Yunshui Celestial Palace was indeed related to the Heavenly Doctor. But where is this place? Why did it become a spatial fragment within the white mist barrier? And why did the Heavenly Doctor indiscriminately slaughter these cultivators? Li Fan calmed his shock and looked at the twisted monster, still kowtowing incessantly. It had survived the Heavenly Doctor's massacre and lived alone in this lost domain for so long. Li Fan's proud Great Five Elements extinction sword couldn't even scratch its surface, indicating its immense strength. Yet now, it seemed like a commoner suffering a great injustice, kneeling before Li Fan, who seemed like a just official. As an official for many years, Li Fan was quite familiar with such scenes. Why was this happening? It was not because Li Fan was stronger than the twisted monster. Instead, did it mistake me for someone else? Yes, that must be it. As for why the twisted monster mistook me, in Li Fan's limited reincarnations, this kind of mistake had happened once before. To verify his suspicion, Li Fan circulated his golden core and summoned a strand of heaven's fiend power, condensing it into a sword. Sure enough, the twisted monster became even more agitated, its cries echoing louder, as if it would break the ground. Heaven's fiend sword, Fisherman Elder. Li Fan's eyes flashed as he looked at the monster kneeling before him. It is begging me because it sensed the Heaven's Fiend power in my Great Five Elements extinction sword and mistook me for the master of the Heaven's Fiend sword. Even the Fisherman Elder almost mistook me. This monster has been trapped here for who knows how many years, relying only on instinct. Such a mistake is understandable. From this, it seems that the Fisherman Elder was likely a leader among the fallen cultivators in this lost domain. The Heavenly Doctor's massacre must have involved a confrontation with him. The Heaven's Fiend sword is incomplete, and the Fisherman Elder became amnesiac and insane, possibly due to the Heavenly Doctor's actions. But soon, Li Fan felt something was off. If the Heavenly Doctor was truly responsible, having lived for so long and becoming much stronger, he would have known about the Fisherman Elder's existence. Why not eliminate him completely instead of letting him survive? Or was it, as Li Fan previously speculated, that the Fisherman Elder had become a strange entity that couldn't be eradicated? Heavenly Doctor Li Fan squinted his eyes. He was not a forgiving person. The Heavenly Doctor had once discovered his true form through the art of observing, listening, questioning, and feeling, broke the celestial profound mirror's protection, and attempted to capture him alive. That terror still lingered in Li Fan's mind. However, due to the vast difference in their power, Li Fan had to bury his desire for revenge deep within. Now, realizing that the Fisherman Elder might be the Heavenly Doctor's nemesis, Li Fan felt a stir of excitement. Perhaps in my next life, I can cause him some trouble. If the Fisherman Elder retrieves the Heaven's Fiend sword and seeks him out during the battle between the Heavenly Doctor and the Confucian scholar, Li Fan's eyes gleamed as he quickly devised a rough plan, drawing from his experiences in several lifetimes. With a cold laugh, he temporarily set the matter aside and turned his attention back to the twisted monster. The Black Death Talisman can last another day, perhaps the hope of escape lies with it. Retracting the Heaven's Fiend power, Li Fan tried to calm and communicate with the monster, expressing that he had been deceived and trapped here by the Heavenly Doctor and was searching for an exit to seek revenge outside. It took nearly half a day for the monster, with its lost intellect, to understand Li Fan's meaning. It stopped kowtowing, became quiet, and its head rotated continuously as if pondering something. Soon after, it crawled away, occasionally turning its head to indicate for Li Fan to follow. In the chaotic domain near the 12th relic, disorienting forces still prevailed. In Li Fan's perception, the leading twisted monster occasionally appeared behind him or suddenly flashed forward, continuously changing positions unpredictably. Li Fan closely followed, adjusting his direction according to the monster's movements. After half a day, the Black Death Talisman's black light had grown increasingly faint, as if it might extinguish at any moment. Following the twisted monster deeper, Li Fan seemed to reach the center of the lost domain. In a round pit, as if struck by a meteor, many figures stood. They were lifeless corpses, but unlike those Li Fan had seen before, these bodies had undergone eerie transformations. Some had turned to stone, resembling statues. Others had turned to jade, glowing brightly. Some had become like trees, covered in cracked bark. The most horrifying were those that had undergone insect transformation. Though appearing normal at first glance, a closer look revealed they were hollow, composed of countless tiny black maggots, still wriggling after many years. The closer Li Fan got to the center, the more pronounced the transformations became. No longer were there standing corpses but instead, strange substances adhered to the ground. The twisted monster's pace slowed, its body trembling subtly, indicating its fear of something ahead. It stopped at a certain point, refusing to move forward. After calming it, Li Fan ventured alone, his guard up. Contrary to his expectations, there was no fearsome monster in the pit's center, only a broken stone lying quietly. The stone once bore inscriptions, now barely visible. However, Li Fan could make out traces, hinting at the character Chaos. Chapter 361, Chaos Sealed Maze. It seemed that with the passage of time, this piece of rubble had lost its original power. Li Fan paused for a moment, then held his breath and approached slowly. Until he reached the rubble, he didn't feel any changes in himself. However, Li Fan's vigilance remained high. This maze was filled with various bizarre phenomena, so one must not take it lightly. Without touching the rubble, he observed it carefully from a distance. The rubble was half buried in the soil, roughly forming a square about the length and width of a person's outstretched arms. There were obvious signs of breakage on its edges. It seemed to have been deliberately cut from a larger stone. Chaos. The area centered around this circular pit, with its disoriented directions and even the bizarre phenomenon of human mutation, could it be related to this character? If indeed a single character triggers many anomalies. What does this, Chaos Stone, have to do with the Heavenly Doctor? After pondering for a moment, Li Fan decided not to bother with it for now, but to check around for any signs of an exit. Unfortunately, apart from the sticky, unidentifiable substances covering the bottom of the circular pit, there was only this chaotic stone. The aberrant monsters now only act on instinct, they shouldn't be trying to deceive me. After some thought, Li Fan returned to the side of the rubble, activated his spiritual power, and lifted it from the ground. It wasn't as heavy as some heavenly treasures, weighing the same as ordinary stones. And after pulling it out, there was no expected exit beneath the rubble. No abnormal situation occurred. Strange. Li Fan put down the Chaos Stone and rubbed his chin. With little time left, Li Fan didn't search for other possibilities. Instead, he stared closely at the stone in front of him, pondering where the exit might be hidden. With not much time to waste, after a moment, Li Fan pointed his finger and shot out a black light towards it. As he stepped back, he observed the changes that occurred when the Annihilation Sword collided with the Chaos Stone. The black sword light flew to the front of the rubble in an instant. Just before the collision, the black light suddenly distorted. Under Li Fan's gaze, three extremely familiar energies emerged from the black light. Madness, darkness, swirling rotation. It was exactly the three powers that make up the Annihilation Sword of the five elements: heavenly calamity, ink death, and the power of the five elements. Under the influence of the Chaos Stone, the black light gradually faded away. Then, these energies that should have been under Li Fan's control began to fight against each other. At the same time, a wave of unknown fluctuations suddenly burst from the Chaos Stone, sweeping towards the outside of the circular pit. Li Fan was caught off guard and couldn't dodge it in time, so he was pierced through. His expression changed suddenly, thinking he had been ambushed. However, to his surprise, the wave turned out to be all sound and fury, signifying nothing. He only felt a tingling sensation as if ants were crawling all over his body, but after the spiritual energy circulated once, it was quickly suppressed. Li Fan was stunned, staring at the Chaos Stone, lost in thought. The chaos dissipates, leaving only its form and no essence. Nevertheless, it still affects my Annihilation Sword of the five elements. Li Fan glanced at the place where the three energies had been entangled. In the recent wave, they had already annihilated each other in mutual combat. The last Black Death symbol he wore had already dimmed to the point of being almost invisible. It seemed like it would completely collapse in the next second. If it were someone else in such a desperate situation, they would have already been in a panic and unable to think clearly. However, with truth as his foundation, Li Fan was not in the least panicked. Without needing to consider his own danger, Li Fan's thoughts quickly turned, continuing to contemplate. After trying many different methods, when the Black Death symbol completely collapsed, the ubiquitous white mist around him, freed from restraint, began to devour Li Fan's lifespan. Just a few breaths later, Li Fan's physiological age on the truth panel jumped from 51 to 52. Although most of the 51 years had already passed, the terrifying speed at which the life-devouring mist-consumed lifespan could still be seen. As life rapidly passed before his eyes, instead of making Li Fan panic, it made his mind even cooler. When Li Fan's lifespan reached 100, a moment of enlightenment struck, and his eyes suddenly lit up. He leapt to the front of the broken stone and, using his hand as a brush, meticulously copied the traces of the character, Chaos, on the stone. Writing stroke by stroke, the brush strokes flowed swiftly, forming in an instant. A faint golden light flashed and disappeared. The chaotic character on the rubble seemed to regain some of its luster. What amazed Li Fan was that the moment the chaotic character reappeared, the spiritual energy within him was instantly depleted. If it weren't for the 9 laws golden elixir sensing the danger and instantly transforming, the power of the 5 elements turned into a continuous supply of spiritual energy to replenish his exhausted body, he might have been drained directly. Even so, Li Fan felt his vision darken and nearly fell to the ground. Fortunately, after absorbing all of Li Fan's spiritual energy, the Chaos Stone also underwent a mysterious change. The characters seemed to come to life, naturally emanating a terrifying aura. The entire stone became ethereal. It emitted a dream-like glow. Even the life-devouring mist was forced back by the radiance emitted from the Chaos Stone, forming a vacuum zone around it. Seeing this, Li Fan quickly hid inside to avoid excessive loss of lifespan. Perhaps because the Chaos Stone activated this time by absorbing the spiritual energy within Li Fan's body. Li Fan did not sense its effect on himself after approaching the rubble. However, he continuously heard creaking sounds from the surroundings. The sticky substances underground seemed to have come to life, beginning a bizarre twisting motion. And Li Fan keenly noticed that the motionless mutated corpses standing in the circular pit were trembling slightly, as if they were about to come alive in the next second. As the instigator of all this, Li Fan couldn't help but feel his hair stand on end. This is not a place to stay for long. Observing the flickering light and the shifting reality of the Chaos Stone, Li Fan vaguely felt a sensation in his heart. It was as if it were a gateway, one he could enter at any time. His spiritual sense did not detect any danger ahead, but rather the only vitality was inside. Without further hesitation, Li Fan flew towards it. As Li Fan had expected, the stone seemed to be non-existent. Li Fan passed straight through it. His vision blurred, endless white mist filled his eyes. Finally, Li Fan left behind that treacherous maze and returned to the normal barrier of white mist. Chapter 362, Loss and Gain. Suddenly breaking free from the entanglement, yet the crisis was far from over. The devouring white mist continuously consumed Li Fan's lifespan, even more fiercely than within the maze. Within the vast white mist, Li Fan once again sensed the location of the Broken Palm Immortal City. In the next moment, he unleashed the purple sky escape technique to its utmost and flew towards it swiftly. Just as Li Fan gradually distanced himself from the maze where the chaotic characters were, a strange, seemingly familiar ripple emanated from behind him. Even the endless expanse of white mist seemed to ripple. Without turning his head, Li Fan could still feel that the maze of chaotic stones seemed to be gradually disappearing. Or perhaps, hiding, but Li Fan couldn't afford to pay attention to it for the time being. There was still a considerable distance to the eternal immortal stronghold from here. And under the relentless consumption of the devouring white mist, Li Fan's age was increasing rapidly. As he moved towards the abyssal roar, the speed of his lifespan being devoured also accelerated. 156, 178, 193. Li Fan stared at the constantly changing numbers on the truth panel, and a long-lost sense of weakness surged in his heart. The instant aging made him feel as if he had returned to being the elderly Grand Master Dazan. The eternal immortal stronghold was within reach, but Li Fan estimated that with the remaining lifespan, it would be extremely difficult to cross the distance ahead. With determination in his heart, without the slightest hesitation, Li Fan took out the life-extending fruit from his storage ring and swallowed it in one gulp. A majestic vitality surged from his abdomen. In an instant, like a rushing river, it spread throughout his body. The feeling of aging and weakness suddenly disappeared, and Li Fan's physiological age limit changed from the original 599 to 899. With a burst of energy, Li Fan, like a purple thunderbolt, tore through the vast white mist. Straight towards the Broken Palm Immortal City. Although Senior Zhang's Purple Sky Divine Thunder escape is much faster than the escape techniques I've seen in the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, it's still too slow. Without the true manual of the Purple Sky Divine Thunder technique, it's still somewhat lacking. It's usually not a big deal, but the importance of escape technique speed is evident at critical moments like this. 264, 378, 492. As his age rapidly increased, Li Fan gradually transformed from a youthful scholar appearance into that of a middle-aged man. Yet, his mind remained extraordinarily calm, unaffected by the passage of life. If there's a chance, I must find a superior escape technique. Aside from the Pearl of Derivation, Zhang Shintong's 7-colored divine light seems to be quite good. To surpass the speed of the Yuanying stage during the Foundation establishment stage. While recalling the deeds of Zhang Shintong, Li Fan was getting closer and closer to the Eternal Immortal Stronghold. 567, 689, 734. Who goes there? A furious roar echoed from the green stone Broken Palm and struck Li Fan through the white mist. Li Fan's flying speed immediately slowed down. Cursing inwardly, he instantly memorized the voice of this person. With a calm and steady expression, Li Fan calmly declared, I am Li Fan, a Golden Core Formation Master under Director Ji's tutelage. Responsible for assisting in the construction of the Tianshuan Locking Spirit Array outside the Abyssal Roar. Help. At the same time, he pulled out a piece of green stone made into a broken finger from his bosom. It was precisely with this token left to him by the cold response garment earlier that Li Fan could still accurately locate the position of the Eternal Immortal Stronghold amidst the vast white mist and the tide of demonic voices. What? A hint of surprise and panic could be heard in the voice. Li Fan accelerated again, flying towards the torn wrist of the broken palm. The previous call for help had indeed been effective. An entrance had indeed opened there. Li Fan dashed in like lightning. The influence of the surrounding white mist disappeared in an instant, and Li Fan's physiological age at this moment finally stabilized at 842/899. Approaching the end of his life, the final limit approaching. A pervasive sense of weakness spread throughout his body, and Li Fan couldn't even control the angle of his flight. Crashing straight to the ground. It took a long time for him to finally come to a stop. Cough. Li Fan was about to say something when he coughed up a mouthful of blood and passed out directly. A cultivator with white hair and a look that seemed to be on the verge of falling appeared in the Eternal Immortal Stronghold in such a conspicuous manner. Naturally, it immediately attracted the attention of the crowd. Coincidentally, the Eternal Immortal Stronghold had been isolated by the tide for some time, causing even more rumors to spread in secret. All sorts of rumors were flying around. Some even solemnly swore that this demonic tide was entirely the conspiracy of the Five Elders Alliance. Now that the Five Elders Alliance had launched a counteroffensive, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance was in a losing streak. It was feared that the Eternal Immortal Stronghold would change hands soon. Fortunately, the owner of the Broken Palm Immortal City, Master Shang, intervened and promptly suppressed these increasingly outrageous rumors. The rumor mongers were hung in the center of the city, lashed day and night as a warning to others. In the darkness, though Li Fan's body was in a state of unconsciousness. But his consciousness was incredibly clear. This was a highly contradictory state. But just as he now felt both the strength of rejuvenation and the weakness of aging simultaneously. It was indeed a real existence. The weakness naturally stemmed from the fact that this body of his in this world was on the brink of exhaustion, not far from its end. While the strength came from the aspect of the soul. After Li Fan had experienced various hardships, survived numerous life and death situations. He finally arrived at the Eternal Immortal Stronghold. And he actually completed the requirements of the reverse cultivation of Tao Heart operation. The stifling and indignant feeling in his heart suddenly dissipated. In the great grinding mill of heart refinement, an unprecedented source of nourishment also arrived. Drops of icy coolness nourished the soul. A sense of growth emerged in Li Fan's heart, comparable to breaking through realms. And the growth of the soul was not just a one-time occurrence. It was like a continuous trickle, never ending. With every action, there's a reward. This is the reward for the reverse cultivation of Tao heart operation. But I'm afraid we have to wait until we truly rescue the people inside the Joshu base before the entire reverse cultivation action can be considered truly concluded. Even though there was a special bonus the first time, the effect of this Xuanwang heart refinement mantra is still too terrifying. Li Fan carefully felt the continuous growth of his own soul. It even made him feel like he could discard his body and exist directly as a soul. After an unknown amount of time, sensing someone approaching beside his sleeping body, Li Fan's mind moved, controlling his body to gradually awaken. The sensation of his body once again took the upper hand, and a sense of powerlessness surged into his heart. With a light cough, Li Fan struggled to sit up. Fellow Taoist, awake! A member of the Qingshan army hurried over to support Li Fan. Fellow Taoist Li Fan, we have verified your identity with the strategy hall. What exactly happened? At this moment, you should be inside the Joshu base. Why did you return to the eternal immortal stronghold? And you even turned into this. He seemed to be full of questions, firing off a barrage of questions. Li Fan, however, noticed that at the moment he woke up, a shadow suddenly appeared in the corner of the room. Although it was almost imperceptible, with Li Fan's strength and soul, he could clearly sense it. Without changing his expression, Li Fan slowly recounted his experience. Chapter 363, Li Fan's Reversal. Li Fan's eyebrows furrowed. What? Anchor Point, code-named Joshu, is running out of supplies, teetering on the brink of life and death, and urgently needs reinforcements. How could this be? Didn't Cold Response just receive a batch of supplies? They actually let you, a mere magician, take such risks. What a bunch of incompetence. There was a newborn maze blocking the way on the journey. No wonder. You actually managed to escape from such a maze, you're quite lucky. Ah, it's just a pity. I am a bit slower, and there isn't much life left. Amid the continuous exclamations of the cultivator in the azure robe named Hao Wei, Li Fan roughly recounted his experiences along the way. Except for concealing some details possibly related to the heavenly doctor within the chaotic stone maze, everything else was told truthfully without any embellishment. After learning of Li Fan's actions, looking at this cultivator with white hair, serene face, and an aura of calmness despite the dire circumstances, Hao Hua's eyes flashed with a trace of respect. A cultivator of such high integrity was extremely rare, even within the entire 10,000 Immortals Alliance. His expression solemn, Hao Wei said softly, "Friend, rest assured and recuperate. I will immediately dispatch personnel to Anchor Point, code-named Joshu, and will certainly not let down your desperate plea for help." Li Fan coughed lightly and nodded slightly. Everything that needed to be done had been done. Clearly, this body could no longer withstand any further strain. If he wanted to function normally again, he needed proper recuperation. Hao Wei withdrew, closing the door behind him. At the same time, Li Fan felt the shadow in the corner of the room also disappear. There are still 57 years of remaining time in this world. Although I can use some longevity treasures again, my situation is somewhat similar to Immortal Sage Jicheng now. We are both nearing the end of our lives, and the effect of longevity may not be as good as imagined. Even if there isn't much time left to live, it doesn't necessarily mean I can't achieve my goals. Just as Li Fan was lost in thought with closed eyes, at the forefront of the Broken Palm Immortal City, in a hidden place facing the abyss, countless demonic sounds gushed out from the nearby void abyss, pouring into this space continuously through a gap, without any hindrance. As if the indescribable voices from the deepest layer of purgatory were constantly echoing and raging here. The powerful and pure demonic sounds seemed to even affect the structure of space. One distorted and terrifying face after another kept forming here. And before these inexplicable faces, there sat a figure. His appearance was unclear, but his body shape was strangely undulating like the flowing waves of a river, constantly flickering. The demonic sounds, which would usually cause a change in expression in ordinary cultivators, seemed to have no effect on him whatsoever. Moreover, those twisted faces formed by the reverberating demonic sounds, after approaching him, seemed to be directly captured, merging into his body. His figure swayed and undulated, while the faces disappeared without a trace. Yet, he remained incredibly calm. Suddenly, he waved his hand. A cyan stone gate rose, blocking the gap in the space here. The demonic sounds gradually diminished. The light dimmed abruptly, and all the remaining demonic faces vanished in an instant. His body swayed even more violently. Lord Shoken. A black shadow appeared beside him, transforming into a black-robed cultivator. He recounted what he had just witnessed to him. A moment later. Is this matter true? There was a hint of doubt in Lord Shoken's tone. Based on my observations, Li Fan did not lie. And indeed, his lifespan has almost been devoured by the elemental. Devouring white mist. I am afraid if he had been a bit slower that day, whether he could survive would be uncertain. Before I came here, I also confirmed with Jihong Taoist that Li Fan's identity is legitimate. On the path to Anchor Point, there are indeed traces of the appearance of a newborn maze. But now it has retreated back into the depths of the white mist, it should be just an occasional event. The black-robed cultivator replied. Lord Shoken fell silent for a while upon hearing this. Such touching deeds, of course, should be known to more people. Especially now, when people's hearts are fluctuating, there needs to be a stark contrast to make them feel ashamed. You go and handle this matter. A moment later, Lord Shoken spoke slowly. The black-robed cultivator nodded. Just as he was about to leave, he glanced at Lord Shoken, hesitated to speak. The black-robed cultivator paused, then asked, Yan Huan has been suspended in the center of the Immortal Fort for continuous whipping for 11 days now. When will he be released? If this continues, that kid won't hold on much longer. Although it's a performance, the demonic sound whip is definitely real. The black-robed cultivator said cautiously, afraid of angering the person in front of him. However, Lord Shoken did not blame him. Originally, letting him intentionally spread rumors was to rectify the atmosphere within the Immortal Fort. Now that we have such a good publicity target, his role is dispensable. Let him down tomorrow. Send a soul recovery pill to him and let him rest well. The black-robed cultivator showed joy on his face and said, Thank you, Lord Shoken. He then quietly disappeared in this secret chamber. For Lord Shoken, the conversation just now seemed to be a trivial episode. As the cyan stone gate fell again, the raging demonic sounds surged back in. His body began to sway and undulate again. Under Lord Shoken's promotion, within half a day, Li Fan's desperate plea for help spread throughout the eternal Immortal Fort. There were doubters, but there were also deeply touched believers. And as those like He Chen who were trapped in Anchor Point were rescued and brought back for investigation, the truth of the incident was confirmed. Although there were still a few cultivators who stubbornly believed that all of this was a staged act, but the vast majority chose to believe. While marveling and admiring Li Fan's righteousness, they couldn't help but feel sorry for him having only a few decades of life left. As for Li Fan himself, after receiving wave after wave of visitors, he finally welcomed a rare moment of tranquility. After some recuperation, I've managed to barely adapt to this aging body. Although I can transform into a younger appearance, apparently it's not as attention-grabbing as my current appearance. Completing the perfect conclusion of his initial reversal of cultivating Tao, the growth of his divine soul made Li Fan relish it. So, Li Fan was preparing to start his second reversal plan. For the Tianquan Soul Locking Grand Competition, my original intention was to pass by casually, just to go through the motions. But now, I am going to do the opposite. I'll invest all my limited remaining life into the construction of the array. For the popularization of the Tianquan Soul Locking, I'll burn every ounce of my strength. Until death. Just thinking like this, Li Fan felt goosebumps all over his body. Suppressing the discomfort in his heart, Li Fan put on a determined expression. With slow and steady steps, he walked out of the room. Chapter 364, Pushing Waves and Assisting Ripples. What? Do you want to return to the base and continue the construction of the Tianquan Soul Locking Array? You're crazy. Seeing the aged Li Fan suddenly appear before him, Hao Wei was startled. And when he heard Li Fan's request, Hao Hua's face first showed disbelief, thinking he had misheard. After confirming repeatedly, he laughed incredulously and firmly refused. Friend Li, you've done enough already. Leave the rest to other array masters. Your current situation is not suitable for continuing the construction of the array. After hesitating for a moment, Hao Wei still suggested, Friend, you've been trapped in the devouring Yuan white mist for too long, your lifespan is running out. For now, you should seize every moment to cultivate. See if you can break through to the Yuanying realm before your lifespan ends. With your talent, I don't think there's no chance to defy fate. Although Hao Hua's words were very much to Li Fan's liking, he still shook his head against his will and said, "Friend's goodwill, I understand. However, one should know their own limitations. With my remaining lifespan, it's absolutely impossible for me to cultivate to the Yuanying realm. Rather than wasting time on such meaningless things, it's better to contribute my last bit of strength to the construction of the Tianquan soul-locking array while I can still move. If, in my lifetime, I can witness the Tianquan soul-locking array enveloping the entire territory of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Even if I die, I will have no regrets." Li Fan's expression was solemn, his words righteous. "If the rest of my life can only be spent aimlessly, waiting for death in confusion, I won't be able to close my eyes even in death. I hope my friend can fulfill this." Looking at Li Fan, who was serious beyond measure, Hao Wei was speechless. Instinctively wanting to refuse, but seeing the extremely sincere gaze of the other party, there was an indescribable feeling in his heart. "All right, friend, wait for me for a moment. I'll go ask for instructions." Seeming afraid to face Li Fan again, Hao Wei hurriedly left. Li Fan remained calm, patiently waiting. After a while, Hao Wei returned with a complicated expression. "Friend Li, your request has been approved. After this demonic sound tide subsides, our Qingshan army will send someone to escort you back to the front lines." "In that case, thank you, Brother Hao." Li Fan seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, nodding in thanks. Friend Li Fan, seeing the relieved look on Li Fan's snowy hair, Hao Wei couldn't help but ask. "What exactly is the reason?" Li Fan's actions had already exceeded Hao Hua's comprehension. He asked full of puzzlement. Li Fan smiled without answering, bowed slightly, and walked away. Leaving behind Hao Wei, bewildered and confused, standing still, silent for a long time. As expected, the news that Li Fan, who was almost half dead, was about to return to the front line to construct arrays spread throughout the Broken Palm Immortal City in an instant. Amidst the clamor, inevitable voices of doubt also arose. However, half a month later, when Li Fan, under the escort of dozens of Qingshan army soldiers, left the Eternal Immortal Stronghold once again and flew towards the Anchor Point base, all doubts were dispelled without attack. The cultivators were shocked by Li Fan's choice, and at the same time, felt ashamed of their previous dirty thoughts. Compared to the sacrifices Li Fan made, their own decades of service in guarding the abyss seemed trivial. As a result, an unprecedented wave emerged within the Qingshan army. No longer casually boasting about hardships, but beginning to compare the length of service in guarding the abyss. All of this, Li Fan, who arrived at the Anchor Point base, was unaware of. Thanks to Li Fan's timely request for assistance, before the supplies at the base were exhausted, reinforcements from the Eternal Immortal Stronghold successfully arrived, preventing a tragedy from happening. Although letting Li Fan venture alone into the white mist resulted in some punishment for the surviving cultivators. But compared to preserving their lives, all of this was nothing. Moreover, at Li Fan's plea, He Chen, Kong Yu, and other cultivators eventually returned to the Anchor Point base, redeemed themselves, and assisted Li Fan in constructing arrays. To ensure Li Fan's safety, the number of escort troops from the Eternal Immortal Stronghold was tripled. The amount of reserve supplies brought was beyond imagination, allowing for extravagant use without worrying about insufficient supplies. And Li Fan didn't rest for a moment. When the long-raging demonic sound tide finally subsided, he directly continued the construction of the soul-locking array. He Chen and the others had all received his life-saving grace. The members of the Qingshan army, even more so, were appointed and obeyed Li Fan's words without hesitation. In this small Anchor Point base, Li Fan also gained absolute authority. With everything at his disposal, all orders would be completed with 120% efficiency. Coupled with Li Fan reversing his own will, from being idle to becoming a workaholic who forgot to rest, the speed of array construction increased by nearly double compared to before. Due to the impact of the previous demonic sound tide, array construction was forcibly halted. Li Fan's ranking on the Great Ranking Board had already dropped to the bottom, hovering around 600 or so. But as everyone began to rebuild, his ranking steadily rose, catching up with determination. The rapid rise in Li Fan's ranking didn't attract much attention. The most eye-catching figure on the entire list was still Guo Yezhong, with 0 points. This person seemed to completely disregard the so-called Great Ranking. Cultivators discussed it one after another, but the 10,000 Immortals Alliance didn't take any special measures. It was only rumored that Guo Yezhong was still within the territory of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, not having defected. And he hadn't given up the fight. When asked by others, he simply responded, "Who wins and who loses is still unknown." As Li Fan threw himself wholeheartedly into the construction of arrays, feeling the torment in his heart, the anecdotes about him began to spread rapidly outside the Broken Palm Immortal City under the indication of interested parties. Especially his touching deeds of continuing to construct the Tianquan soul-locking array despite undergoing tremendous changes in his lifespan running out. They were glorified. Soon, almost every cultivator outside seclusion in the 10,000 Immortals Alliance knew about Li Fan's actions. Whether to believe it or not was another matter. Li Fan's communication talisman was the first to explode. He Zhenghao, the Oracle Child, and acquaintances from the former Universal Pavilion all sent messages inquiring. There were too many, so Li Fan had to set up an automatic reply, briefly explaining the situation. Naturally, his friends lamented and admired Li Fan extremely. A few even promised to find longevity treasures for Li Fan. Li Fan thanked each one. Then he continued to throw himself tirelessly into the construction of arrays. In this way, 2 years passed. One day, a colorful light tore through the white mist and headed straight for the Broken Palm Immortal City. Chapter 365, Creation Bell Divine Ability. Creation Bell Divine Ability. He wants to see me. In the vast white mist, Li Fan paused from his work. Listening to He Chen's report, Li Fan furrowed his brows slightly, feeling somewhat puzzled. He had only met him briefly in the contemplation of Tao, and they had never formally met in the real world. Seeing Li Fan's expression, He Chen lowered his voice and said, "According to this Creation Bell Divine Ability, he has a method to extend Master Li lifespan. But he insists on seeing you in person. Although this person only has the cultivation of the Foundation Establishment stage, his body emits a colorful divine light, which is truly mysterious and extraordinary, even able to resist the devouring elemental white mist. The elders in the Immortal Stronghold also speak highly of him. Moreover, this Creation Bell Divine Ability has a wide circle of friends." This time, he was introduced and guaranteed by a nascent soul cultivator before the Immortal Stronghold agreed to let him come over. "Master Li, there's no harm in meeting him," He Chen suggested. Among the cultivators rescued by Li Fan 2 years ago in the Jiashu base, He Chen was the most grateful to him. Even when Li Fan's lifespan was nearing its end, he continued to strive at the forefront of constructing arrays. He Chen admired Li Fan to the point of fervor, even obeying his words unquestioningly. Li Fan nodded slightly, saying, "Very well, then lead me to meet this Creation Bell Divine Ability." But in his heart, he thought, "It seems like someone comes knocking when you're about to fall asleep." Setting aside whether this so-called method of extending lifespan is true or false, it's good to probe into the origin of his colorful divine light. Returning to the Jiashu base, in the meeting hall, an old man with white beard and hair, dressed in Taoist robes, had been waiting for some time. As Li Fan stepped in, the Creation Bell Divine Ability's gaze instantly focused on him. After exchanging glances, Li Fan bowed first, saying, "Friend Zhang, I've heard much about you." The Creation Bell Divine Ability also sighed, "Under the great reputation lies no falsehoods. The rumors outside actually turned out to be true. Friend, indeed, you are at the brink of life's end with rapidly declining vitality." At these words, He Chen's gaze turned somewhat hostile. But Li Fan's heart stirred, signaling He Chen to leave for now. Once they were alone in the hall, he clasped his hands and said, "Friend, your words seem profound." Creation Bell Divine Ability stroked his beard and nodded, "It is precisely because I have experienced a situation similar to friends that I can be so certain. To be honest, when I was in the outside world, upon hearing about friends' deeds, I actually didn't believe it," he admitted. Creation Bell Divine Ability, he wants to see me. In the vast white mist, Li Fan paused from his work. Listening to He Chen's report, Li Fan furrowed his brows slightly, feeling somewhat puzzled. He had only met him briefly in the contemplation of Tao, and they had never formally met in the real world. Seeing Li Fan's expression, He Chen lowered his voice and said, "According to this Creation Bell Divine Ability, he has a method to extend Master Li lifespan. But he insists on seeing you in person. Although this person only has the cultivation of the Foundation Establishment stage, his body emits a colorful divine light, which is truly mysterious and extraordinary, even able to resist the devouring elemental white mist. The elders in the Immortal Stronghold also speak highly of him. Moreover, this Creation Bell Divine Ability has a wide circle of friends." This time, he was introduced and guaranteed by a nascent soul cultivator before the Immortal stronghold agreed to let him come over. Master Li, there's no harm in meeting him, He Chen suggested. Among the cultivators rescued by Li Fan 2 years ago in the Jiashu base, He Chen was the most grateful to him. Even when Li Fan's lifespan was nearing its end, he continued to strive at the forefront of constructing arrays. He Chen admired Li Fan to the point of fervor, even obeying his words unquestioningly. Li Fan nodded slightly, saying, "Very well, then lead me to meet this creation bell divine ability." But in his heart, he thought, "It seems like someone comes knocking when you're about to fall asleep." Setting aside whether this so-called method of extending lifespan is true or false, it's good to probe into the origin of his colorful divine light. Returning to the Jiashu base, in the meeting hall, an old man with white beard and hair, dressed in Taoist robes, had been waiting for some time. As Li Fan stepped in, the creation bell divine ability's gaze instantly focused on him. After exchanging glances, Li Fan bowed first, saying, "Friend Zhang, I've heard much about you." The creation bell divine ability also sighed, "Under the great reputation lies no falsehoods. The rumors outside actually turned out to be true. Friend, indeed, you are at the brink of life's end with rapidly declining vitality." At these words, He Chen's gaze turned somewhat hostile. But Li Fan's heart stirred, signaling He Chen to leave for now. Once they were alone in the hall, he clasped his hands and said, "Friend, your words seem profound." Creation bell divine ability stroked his beard and nodded, "It is precisely because I have experienced a situation similar to friends that I can be so certain. To be honest, when I was in the outside world, upon hearing about friends' deeds, I actually didn't believe it," he admitted. Creation bell divine ability, he wants to see me. In the vast white mist, Li Fan paused from his work. Listening to He Chen's report, Li Fan furrowed his brows slightly, feeling somewhat puzzled. He had only met him briefly in the contemplation of Tao, and they had never formally met in the real world. Seeing Li Fan's expression, He Chen lowered his voice and said, "According to this creation bell divine ability, he has a method to extend Master Li lifespan. But he insists on seeing you in person. Although this person only has the cultivation of the foundation establishment stage, his body emits a colorful divine light, which is truly mysterious and extraordinary, even able to resist the devouring elemental white mist. The elders in the Immortal stronghold also speak highly of him. Moreover, this creation bell divine ability has a wide circle of friends." This time, he was introduced and guaranteed by a nascent soul cultivator before the Immortal stronghold agreed to let him come over. Master Li, there's no harm in meeting him, He Chen suggested. Among the cultivators rescued by Li Fan 2 years ago in the Jiashu base, He Chen was the most grateful to him. Even when Li Fan's lifespan was nearing its end, he continued to strive at the forefront of constructing arrays. He Chen admired Li Fan to the point of fervor, even obeying his words unquestioningly. Li Fan nodded slightly, saying, "Very well, then lead me to meet this creation bell divine ability." But in his heart, he thought, "It seems like someone comes knocking when you're about to fall asleep." Setting aside whether this so-called method of extending lifespan is true or false, it's good to probe into the origin of his colorful divine light. Returning to the Jiashu base, in the meeting hall, an old man with white beard and hair, dressed in Taoist robes, had been waiting for some time. As Li Fan stepped in, the creation bell divine ability's gaze instantly focused on him. After exchanging glances, Li Fan bowed first, saying, "Friend Zhang, I've heard much about you." The creation bell divine ability also sighed, "Under the great reputation lies no falsehoods. The rumors outside actually turned out to be true. Friend, indeed, you are at the brink of life's end with rapidly declining vitality." At these words, He Chen's gaze turned somewhat hostile. But Li Fan's heart stirred, signaling He Chen to leave for now. Once they were alone in the hall, he clasped his hands and said, "Friend, your words seem profound." Creation bell divine ability stroked his beard and nodded, "It is precisely because I have experienced a situation similar to friends that I can be so certain. To be honest, when I was in the outside world, upon hearing about friends' deeds, I actually didn't believe it," he admitted. Chapter 366. The mysteries of life and death. Between life and death lies great terror. But also great opportunities. Ordinary people, when faced with the threat of death, will unleash powers far beyond the norm. What more for cultivators like us? Zhang Shintang's expression became serious, and he said solemnly, "The greater the pressure, the greater the drive. What pressure is greater than death? By leveraging the brink of death, cultivation speed and perception will be 1,000 times greater than usual. This is my personal experience, absolutely true. If a fellow Taoist can grasp this power, they can cultivate to the nascent soul stage before their lifespan ends. It's definitely not difficult. Zhang Shentong pledged firmly. If what Taoist friend says is true, then why are there cultivators in the world who are trapped for a lifetime, unable to break through even in death? Li Fan said somewhat helplessly. Zhang Shentong was momentarily surprised, but after careful thought, he quickly came up with an answer. That must be because they aren't afraid enough of death. I understand. Taoist friend, you now transcend worldly concerns, treating life and death as insignificant. You worry that you can't utilize the pressure of the brink of death for cultivation, right? Zhang Shentong suddenly realized. Don't worry, in my cultivation technique Mysteries of Life and Death, there's a section called Sensation of Life and Death. After studying it, one can fully comprehend the preciousness of life and the horror of death. Li Fan carefully observed the old Taoist in front of him. He felt that Zhang Shentong's way of thinking was somewhat different from ordinary people. Could it be that practicing this Mysteries of Life and Death has damaged his brain? He directly talked about his own cultivation technique the first time he met someone. He replied seriously, Taoist friend, your technique is profound, I admire it. However, different techniques cannot be cultivated together. Although I admire your technique, I am not fortunate enough to benefit from it. Zhang Shentong interrupted Li Fan nonchalantly, that's why I came to seek Taoist friend. Please, teach me how to treat life and death as insignificant. How can I, like Taoist friend, not fear death? If I can overcome the fear of death, then surely I, old Taoist that I am, can find liberation. Zhang Shentong said urgently. Li Fan was stunned by his words. Zhang Taoist, you. Zhang Shentong waved his hand, I know Taoist friend may not understand. But it's true, I really don't want to live anymore. I have lived in this world for 168 years, witnessing all kinds of joys and sorrows. Everything in the world, to me, has lost its pleasure. For techniques, treasures, territories, and lifespan, people fight endlessly. Between life and death lies great terror. But also great opportunities. Ordinary people, when faced with the threat of death, will unleash powers far beyond the norm. What more for cultivators like us? Zhang Shentong's expression became serious, and he said solemnly. The greater the pressure, the greater the drive. What pressure is greater than death? By leveraging the brink of death, cultivation speed and perception will be 1,000 times greater than usual. This is my personal experience, absolutely true. If a fellow Taoist can grasp this power, they can cultivate to the nascent soul stage before their lifespan ends. It's definitely not difficult. Zhang Shentong pledged firmly. If what Taoist friend says is true, then why are there cultivators in the world who are trapped for a lifetime, unable to break through even in death? Li Fan said somewhat helplessly. Zhang Shentong was momentarily surprised, but after careful thought, he quickly came up with an answer. That must be because they aren't afraid enough of death. I understand. Taoist friend, you now transcend worldly concerns, treating life and death as insignificant. You worry that you can't utilize the pressure of the brink of death for cultivation, right? Zhang Shentong suddenly realized. Don't worry, in my cultivation technique Mysteries of Life and Death, there's a section called Sensation of Life and Death. After studying it, one can fully comprehend the preciousness of life and the horror of death. Li Fan carefully observed the old Taoist in front of him. He felt that Zhang Shentong's way of thinking was somewhat different from ordinary people. Could it be that practicing this Mysteries of Life and Death has damaged his brain? He directly talked about his own cultivation technique the first time he met someone. He replied seriously, Taoist friend, your technique is profound, I admire it. However, different techniques cannot be cultivated together. Although I admire your technique, I am not fortunate enough to benefit from it. Zhang Shentong interrupted Li Fan nonchalantly, that's why I came to seek Taoist friend. Please, teach me how to treat life and death as insignificant. How can I, like Taoist friend, not fear death? If I can overcome the fear of death, then surely I, old Taoist that I am, can find liberation. Zhang Shentong said urgently. Li Fan was stunned by his words. Zhang Taoist, you. Zhang Shentong waved his hand, I know Taoist friend may not understand. But it's true, I really don't want to live anymore. I have lived in this world for 168 years, witnessing all kinds of joys and sorrows. Everything in the world, to me, has lost its pleasure. For techniques, treasures, territories, and lifespan, people fight endlessly. Not bad, not bad. Death is not the end, but the beginning of true rebirth. After listening to Li Fan, he seemed to be lost in a trance, muttering to himself. There's no need to fear at all. After an unknown amount of time, he suddenly looked relieved, as if he had suddenly realized something. However, a dangerous multicolored light suddenly appeared around the old Taoist. Instead, Zhang Shentong coldly chuckled, still trying to scare me. I have already understood. It's all an illusion, death is life, only by dying can there be life. The multicolored divine light spun faster and faster. Li Fan felt something was amiss and quietly retreated. Discerning everything, foreseeing the truth, Zhang Shentong raised his right palm, his face determined, about to strike down on his own head. Zhang Taoist, sensation of life and death. Li Fan shouted. Zhang Shentong's movement immediately stopped. With a light flick, a jade slip flew towards Li Fan. Haha, Li Fan Taoist, I'll go first. After speaking, Zhang Shentong continued to strike down fiercely. But at that moment, his left palm, uncontrollably, suddenly stretched out and blocked in front of his right palm. Zhang Shentong's face suddenly became fierce. Dare to obstruct my path? Die. A multicolored divine light shot out from his right palm, heading straight towards his left palm. At the same time, another radiance also timely shot out from his left palm. The two radiants collided, cancelling each other out. However, Zhang Shentong himself did not stop, muttering curses under his breath. At the same time, it was as if there were two mortal enemies inside him, fighting each other with every move. The multicolored divine light flew horizontally, stirring up the defensive array inside the stronghold. Meanwhile, outside, He Chen, upon hearing the commotion, hurriedly rushed in. Seeing the frenzied Zhang Shentong, he looked at Li Fan somewhat puzzled. Li Fan shrugged, gesturing for him not to act rashly. As time passed, the battle between the two personalities inside Zhang Shentong became increasingly intense. The small Jiashu stronghold could no longer contain him. Amidst the continuous flashing of multicolored radiance, he disappeared into the depths of the devouring elemental mist. Inside the stronghold, people who witnessed the scene were discussing excitedly. Meanwhile, Li Fan quietly arrived at the cultivation chamber and began to read the jade slip that Zhang Shentong had handed over earlier. Chapter 367, Life and Death Can Refine the Heart. Practicing like this, who wouldn't go crazy? After reading the entire jade slip, Li Fan couldn't help but sigh. Recorded in the jade slip is naturally what Zhang Shentong said before, the mystical art of life and death he cultivated. Half a scroll, origin unknown. The essence of the technique is even more incredible. The first chapter of the technique clearly states, believing that everything in the world will ultimately face death. From birds, beasts, plants, humans, to cultivators, demonic beasts, and even the heavens and earth themselves. No one can escape this fate. If one wishes to transcend death, they can only do so before their own death arrives. Attain a state of neither life nor death, both alive and dead. This is also the highest realm envisioned by the technique. To achieve being in both life and death requires an unparalleled comprehension and understanding of the essence of life and death. The sensory chapter of life and death is a method in the technique used to comprehend life and death. From the initial attachment to life and fear of death to abandoning life and forgetting death, and then to being in both life and death. The mystical art of life and death is such a peculiar technique practiced with the power of life and death. Because of its lofty ideals, the content of the technique is extremely profound and obscure. Compared to the mystical transformation of true spirits, it is even more profound. Perhaps it is because the founder of the technique did not reach the realm of being both alive and dead. The latter part of the cultivation content of the technique is mostly speculative and conjectural. With a rough glance, Li Fan could see one or two contradictions. The technique is not bad, but it's a pity it's incomplete. If it were complete, it could still be somewhat useful. For now, it can only serve as a reference. Moreover, it's a pity that Zhang Shentong's seven-colored divine light seems to have no connection with this mystical art of life and death. Li Fan shook his head slightly. Folding up the jade slip, Li Fan pondered for a moment, trying to operate the sensory chapter of life and death. This chapter is a prerequisite method that one must cultivate in order to enter the mystical art of life and death. Even ordinary people can practice it. Naturally, Li Fan had no problem with it. Every word and sentence silently flowed through Li Fan's mind. After 3 days and 3 nights. As Li Fan meditated with closed eyes, his mind suddenly fluctuated. Countless scenes appeared before his eyes in an instant. He seemed to have vaguely returned to Dazan, experiencing the spiritedness during the Triple Unity, the wanton behavior in the Empress Dowager's palace, the arrogance of dominating the world. And later, he experienced dangers, broke through the immortal absolute formation, and finally arrived in the cultivation world. Step by step, from an ordinary person, cultivating qi, establishing foundation, forming core. Every exciting moment in his past life rushed into his mind, letting Li Fan feel as if he were experiencing them again firsthand. During this fragmented time, many joyful events overlapped. Even with Li Fan's willpower, he couldn't help but feel a bit ecstatic and joyful. Just as this joyful atmosphere reached its peak, all the scenes shattered like bubbles, one after another. In their place were the near-death moments Li Fan often encountered. Father, father, husband. Faintly, there came the desperate cries of agony. In his first life, he had not yet awakened to the truth and was about to die from illness. It's just seeking a chance at survival. Ko Hong's mad laughter accompanied by a tremendous roar and the sky full of flames appeared before Li Fan's eyes. That was in the second life, when Dao Xuanzi and Ko Hong battled, and Xuanjing was destroyed in an instant, and Li Fan narrowly escaped death. The tearing of the boundary wall of the immortal absolute formation, the rapid aging of the transformed sea, the pursuit of the law enforcement elders, scenes of fatal crises seemed to descend upon Li Fan simultaneously. Until the space in the Tianshuan mirror was torn apart, and ahead, a kind-faced old man could vaguely be seen. The fear in his heart was uncontrollable. Li Fan snapped out of his cultivation. Still, the remaining half of the truth character had yet to be uttered in his mind. The various terrifying images disappeared in an instant. Only then did Li Fan manage to stop. His whole body was soaked in cold sweat, and his breath was as rapid as if he had just escaped death. Li Fan's gaze flickered as he looked back on the experience just now. The cultivation failed. The sensory chapter of life and death triggers a deep fear of death in the heart, not just simple illusions. It's somewhat similar to that illusion horse, extremely lifelike. What the heart perceives as real, is real. Truly perilous, if deeply trapped in it, unable to distinguish true from false, there might truly be a possibility of being scared to death by oneself. No wonder Zhang Shintong was so erratic. Only in this way can one truly feel the fear of death. Thinking of this, Li Fan sighed softly. Unfortunately, this method is useless to me. Ordinary people facing the threat of death naturally feel terrified and desperate. But I am different. No matter what the situation, I always have a lifeline. That is my truth. When the sensory chapter of life and death reaches its extreme, facing the substantial threat of death, I will instinctively call upon truth to start all over again. Wait. In an instant, Li Fan thought of something, his expression changing slightly. The instinct for survival, the Xuanwang heart refinement mantra standing up suddenly, Li Fan's thoughts turned quickly. Walking back and forth, contemplating feasibility. To reverse the cultivation of the Tao heart, I need to resist the instincts within me. And for me, the greatest instinct is, at the moment of death, to invoke truth. If I were to reverse cultivate the Tao heart in this way, the harvest would surely be unimaginable. But it's impossible to truly abandon the plan of invoking truth at the moment of life and death. By using the sensory chapter of life and death, this problem disappears. Li Fan's gaze flickered, and after a moment, he steadied his mind. He began to operate the sensory chapter once again. When, this time, all the beauty of life was shattered, and the threat of death descended once again. Li Fan still couldn't shake off the habit that seemed to have been carved into his soul, and still called upon truth. The second attempt failed. Undeterred, Li Fan persisted, the third time, the fourth time, until after 56 attempts. Facing the face of the heavenly doctor, Li Fan activated the Xuanwang heart refinement mantra. At the same time, with extreme willpower, he temporarily suppressed the instinctive urge to invoke truth. But the threat of death did not disappear with Li Fan's restraint. Instead, it became more and more real. The heavenly doctor's face became clearer before his eyes, and the spiritual sense in Li Fan's heart continued to warn frantically. In the end, Li Fan was still drenched in sweat, breaking free from the cultivation of the sensory chapter of life and death. Perhaps, this sensory chapter can only truly confront death without harming oneself after reaching the stage of abandoning life and forgetting death. Li Fan was well aware that if he had persisted just now, even if he hadn't perished on the spot, the outcome would definitely not have been good. This technique is indeed somewhat sinister. However, in just that brief moment, the harvest was also immense. In the heart refinement grand millstone, compared to the previous events of traversing the white mist and risking his life to seek help, there was a little more coolness, which he swallowed down wholeheartedly. Chapter 368. Fresh blood condenses the Tao path. Like drinking a bowl of ice water during the hottest days of summer, Li Fan felt refreshed both physically and mentally. His divine soul continued to grow at a perceptible speed. It really works. The Xuanwang heart refinement mantra, combined with the life and death sensing chapter, indeed has miraculous effects. His speculation proved true, and Li Fan felt a sense of joy. In this way, the enhancement speed of my divine soul might reach a terrifying level. Just as Li Fan was about to redouble his efforts and retry the life and death sensing chapter, unexpectedly, the result deviated from his expectations. Perhaps it was due to the recent shock, leading to psychological adaptation. Even though Heavenly Doctor's face was almost touching Li Fan's, there was still no trace of fear in his heart. Occasionally, thoughts like, "Forget it, just let it be. Kill me and get it over with," even flashed through his mind. If the heart is fearless, what fear is there in death? Li Fan seemed to have gained some understanding, shook his head, and stopped cultivation. I finally understand why Master Zhang Shentong chose to end his life. It seems to be the influence of this life and death profound technique. However, despite its flaws, it would be a pity to give up the cultivation method that complements the Xuanwang heart refinement mantra. After all, completing a full reverse cultivation of the heart is quite troublesome. With the assistance of this life and death sensing chapter, the feedback is almost immediate. And both can be combined and used simultaneously. After this world's adaptation period, I will try cultivation again to see the results. In the next life, perhaps I can complete the life and death profound technique with the assistance of the pearl of derivation. To him, the flaws of the technique were not a problem at all. As long as there were benefits, they could be utilized. Perhaps, when he collected enough techniques, he could use the pearl of derivation to derive a set of his own, a true heavenly net divine technique. Zhang Shentong's sudden visit made Master Li, who was known for his diligence, take a rare few days off from seclusion. But the other cultivators of the Jian sect had no objections. They even hoped that Li Fan could rest for a while longer. If Li Fan really died suddenly from exhaustion while on duty, then these people would probably be pointed at for the rest of their lives. However, the cultivators' hopes were doomed to be dashed. When Li Fan emerged from seclusion, he immediately resumed the construction of the Tianquan spirit locking array without a moment's rest. And once he started this time, there was no pause. When the outer perimeter array of the locking formation was complete and merged with other array masters like Shui Mu, Li Fan took the initiative to lead and began constructing the internal formation towards the central position. This reckless effort made Shui Mu and the others feel ashamed. They could only follow behind, working tirelessly. And so, the time came for the anchoring of 35 years. On this day, as Li Fan was deeply focused on constructing the array units, his hand suddenly trembled, and a rare failure in the formation occurred. The guards beside him all looked at Li Fan with some astonishment. This was something that had never happened since they started following Li Fan. It's worth mentioning that Master Li is renowned for his efficient and precise formations and is now ranked in the top 10 in the grand comparison. Many array masters even traveled from afar to observe, feeling self-deprecating after seeing his skills. Could it be that years of exhaustion had finally taken its toll on his body? People exchanged worried glances. However, moments later, the fluctuations of spiritual energy emanating from Li Fan surprised them all. "Master Li, has your cultivation progressed further?" He Chen couldn't help but ask. Li Fan calmed the sudden and continuous feedback of cultivation within him and nodded slightly. Seeing Li Fan's admission, He Chen and the others were all inexplicably shocked. Working so hard in such harsh conditions, almost no cultivation for years. And with their lifespan nearing its end. With so many unfavorable factors, Master Li still managed to make a breakthrough. This completely overturned their understanding. Could it be that the legend of "fortune favors the good" is true? Li Fan, however, had no time to care about the thoughts of the cultivators around him. He was trying to use the formless killing intent to check on the situation of Su Xiaomei and Zhang Haobo. Because the significant increase in his cultivation feedback came from the two who disappeared from the remnants of the Chaoyuan sect nearly 10 years ago. In these 10 years, they seem to have completely disappeared from this world. Not a single trace of feedback. But their sudden appearance after 10 years has given me a big surprise. This was the biggest return on investment Li Fan had gained since practicing the mountain meditation technique. Far beyond the feedback limit that a golden core cultivator could bring. Li Fan estimated that Su Xiaomei and Zhang Haobo had probably both reached the nascent soul realm. Interesting, even with their talent, it's too exaggerated to cultivate from foundation establishment to nascent soul realm within 10 years. Moreover, where did they get their techniques and subworlds? It seems they've gained quite a bit from the Chaoyuan sect. Perhaps because of the deep mist and the distance from the Jushan province, even with the spirit shocking array left to them, they couldn't sense anything from that area for the time being. Instead, guests were welcomed back to the long-unused Bone Pioneer realm. As the owner of the Bone Pioneer realm, Li Fan felt something. He gestured for everyone to rest temporarily, returned to the Jian base, and went into the secret room to perform a ritual. By the time he entered, there was no trace of the visitor in the Pioneer realm. But judging from the remaining aura, the visitor was undoubtedly Su Xiaomei. After scanning around, Li Fan quickly noticed a pile of odd-shaped objects near the place where the skull predecessor was sleeping according to the settings. There were all sorts of strange objects. Thinking of the instructions given before, Li Fan's heart skipped a beat. He stepped forward and grabbed one of them, carefully examining it. Discovering rechargeable items, would you like to absorb them? As the prompt popped up, Li Fan chose to proceed, and the anchoring charging progress flickered slightly. In the end, there was no change. Heavenly treasures. Li Fan looked at the broken junk in front of him with a strange expression. These are all damaged heavenly treasures that were released from the bodies of deceased cultivators. And the quantity, Li Fan counted quietly, suddenly feeling a little overwhelmed. 3,762 items. There was no doubt that these were all obtained by Su Xiaomei from the remnants of the Chaoyuan sect. Li Fan picked up another item and observed it carefully. Unlike ancient artifacts that had been around for a long time, they seemed more like they had just been extracted from the bodies of deceased cultivators. There was even a strong smell of blood lingering around them. Techniques, subworlds, and so many heavenly treasures. What exactly did Shuofeng and Su Xiaomei encounter in the remnants of the Chaoyuan sect? Despite the myriad of doubts in his mind, Li Fan didn't delay in absorbing the heavenly treasures. After absorbing 13 treasures in a row, the anchoring charging progress finally flickered for a moment. It went from 2% to 3%. Chapter 369, Sword Opening Towards the Yuan Sect. It seems that it's not that rare items of heaven and earth can't increase the charging progress, but rather their effects are too poor. More than 10 of them can only increase by 1%. However, with this many items in front of me, I should be able to unlock another anchor point again, right? Li Fan felt slightly delighted in his heart as his hands kept moving. After a while, all 3,762 damaged rare items of heaven and earth were completely absorbed. The number of anchor points on Li Fan's truth panel changed to 4. The charging progress for anchoring reverted back to 0%. What a pity. As the charging progress continued to increase, the number of items needed gradually increased as well. From adding 1% with every 10 items to later needing more than 20 or 30. Until unlocking the 5th anchor point, Li Fan absorbed all the remaining damaged items without increasing the progress by even 1%. It seems that higher grade items are needed to unlock the 5th anchor point. Li Fan thought to himself. Li Fan had long guessed what items would be needed next. Rare items of heaven and earth were the convergence of the laws of heaven and earth. But damaged items, or even the extraordinary things of ordinary people, were no longer enough to satisfy truth's appetite. So it was obvious that substitutes from higher realms were needed. Either rare items of the earth or sky, or perhaps the golden pills condensed by cultivators could be tried. For rare items of the earth, Li Fan could try absorbing the Kanghai pearls in the next life to see the effect. Rare items of the sky were too rare to be considered. As for previously, Li Fan had tried to purchase some golden Dan fragments, but facing these defective products, truth was completely indifferent. Complete golden Dan Tianshuan mirrors were not available for sale either. In short, for the time being, Li Fan shouldn't think about unlocking additional anchor points. The 4th anchor point must be used in a crucial place. After pondering for a while, Li Fan walked out of the secret room. Instead of immediately diving back into work, he first borrowed the Tianquan mirror from the base and searched for information about the ruins of the Yuan sect. Currently, there weren't many discussions among people, but there was already a momentum to cause a huge sensation. Not long ago, within the ruins of the Yuan sect, which had been almost deserted for several years, sudden anomalies occurred. Blood rain fell from the sky, and those occasional, wandering phantoms also experienced startling changes. Chapter 370. Intense competition for ranking. Let me oversee the construction of the core area. Inside the anchor point, Li Fan looked at the suddenly visiting Shui Mu and others, slightly stunned. Just after a brief thought, he decisively refused. I'm not being modest. During the assessment at the Langwan Academy, my affinity with the Tianquan mirror was just ordinary. On this point, friend Shui Mu can testify for me. I appreciate your kindness, but I'm truly limited in ability and can't bear such a heavy responsibility. Senior Yang's array skills far surpass mine, and he is highly respected. I see no one more suitable than him. Li Fan sincerely said. The array master named Zhang Qigi looked at the surrounding cultivators with some unfriendly eyes, hurriedly responded, "Friendly Fan is joking. Your contributions are obvious to all. How could I dare?" Before he could finish, Li Fan smiled and interrupted him. "Friend Zhang, don't misunderstand, every word I said was sincere. As everyone knows, the final construction process of the Tianquan Spirit Lock Array requires communication with the central array hub for continuous debugging in the future. This is indeed not my forte, and I'm not deliberately declining." Seeing Zhang Qigi's hesitation, Li Fan added, "I understand your concern, Senior Zhang. Contributing more to the peripheral and internal arrays requires a lot of effort but relatively less recognition. However, taking over the management of the central core area, while it may not require much effort, yields significantly more recognition. Taking on this responsibility now may seem like plucking peaches forcefully. Are you afraid of being criticized in the future, or not?" Seeing Li Fan openly express his thoughts, Zhang Qigi's old face turned slightly red. Just as he was about to explain, Li Fan continued, "Let everyone know, I'm already halfway to the grave. As for the so-called grand ranking..." Li Fan paused, dispelling the slight resentment in his heart. With a calm expression, he said, "I simply don't care at all. The only thing I hope for is to make as much contribution as possible before my demise. All I'm considering is the most efficient way to construct the array. So, Senior Zhang, there's no need to refuse. Who else but you for such an important task?" With that, Li Fan scanned around to express his intentions. After hearing Li Fan's heartfelt words, Zhang Qigi's face flushed. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Qigi bowed deeply to Li Fan. "In that case, I'll accept with gratitude. I will certainly not disappoint your expectations, friend Li," Zhang Qigi said solemnly. Li Fan grasped his hands earnestly. "Friend, I will trouble you from now on." 3 days later, Wang Fusong, accompanied by 2 black-robed cultivators, arrived at the anchor point. Their visit was prompted by the message from Li Fan and the others, notifying them to deliver the Tianquan mirror, also known as the Central Array Hub. "Greetings, Senior Wang Fu," Li Fan bowed. "You little brat." The chubby Wang Fusong looked at Li Fan with a complicated gaze. "Not bad, kid." Patting Li Fan's shoulder, Wang Fusong didn't say much more. He took out a damaged jade token, turned around, and completed the connection with the jade tokens in the hands of the 2 black-robed cultivators. In the unfolding light curtain, countless characters cascaded like a waterfall. A barely noticeable ripple emanated from the light curtain, scanning the surroundings. It seemed to be conducting identity verification. After a moment, the ripple receded, and a quaint and exquisite copper mirror emerged from the light curtain. As the characters flowed into the mirror, the light curtain disappeared without a trace. Only the copper mirror remained, floating in midair, emitting a serene dark light. Wang Fusong's expression became solemn as he consecutively pinched hand seals. Pointing towards the outside of the base, amidst the devouring white mist, he gestured with one finger. Ripples spread through the mist, as if something inside the mist was responding to him. Li Fan squinted slightly. That should be the position of the core area of the planned Tianquan Spirit Lock Array. As expected, after a moment, a green light broke through the white mist. Straight towards the anchor point below, directly hitting the suspended copper mirror. Every trace of green light was absorbed by the copper mirror. The surrounding green light gradually converged and disappeared. Finally, when there was no more mysterious aura around the copper mirror, it looked just like the most ordinary object. Wang Fusang finally relaxed, took out a square crimson wooden box from his bosom, and put the copper mirror inside. However, as the copper mirror entered the wooden box, the previously substantial wooden box transformed into a red phantom in front of everyone's eyes. Then, converging towards the center, it turned into a red light spot and flew to the center of Wang Fusang's forehead, where it settled. Without explaining his recent actions, Wang Fusang spoke solemnly to the crowd, "Until the central array hub is fully placed, I will be overseeing it. Zhang Qigi, how long do you think this process will take with everyone's combined efforts?" Without hesitation, Zhang Qigi replied, "Within 7 days, with everyone's combined efforts, we should be able to complete it." Wang Fusang nodded slowly, "Time is of the essence. After the formation is completed here, I still have to rush to other places." With that, he looked at Li Fan, his expression somewhat relieved. "Thanks to the hard work of Li Fan, your progress in constructing this formation is already one of the fastest batches. As far as I know, the current top-ranked Tianjin province has not yet completed the entire formation and should still be in the process of constructing the central core area. If you put more effort into it, you might be able to overtake them." Just as Wang Fusang was encouraging everyone, a cry of surprise suddenly came from outside the council chamber, from the direction where the Tianshuan mirror was located. "What's going on? How did the first ranked suddenly increase their points so much? Now the gap between them and the second ranked has widened." As these words fell into the ears of the cultivators present, their gazes towards Wang Fusang became somewhat strange. "Hey, you're a step too late. But aiming for second place is still hopeful." Wang Fusang had quite a thick skin and spoke as if nothing had happened. "All right, no time to waste, let's move quickly," he instructed. Just as everyone was preparing to head to the central area of the formation to complete the final work, another cry rang out, attracting the attention of Li Fan and the others. "Huh, look, Guo Yezhong, who has always been ranked last, is finally moving. Indeed, although his points are pitifully low, he is still ranked last, but at least he's finally starting to work." Li Fan, Shui Mu, and Zhang Qigi looked at each other. They all felt something was amiss. Did Guo Yezhong gain points at the same time the first Tianshuan spirit lock array was completed? Is there any connection between them? Li Fan turned his gaze to Wang Fusang, seeking answers. The chubby man just shrugged, looking like he absolutely had no idea. Chapter 371. Locking Spirit Formation first completed. Emperor Fusang Ming knew that there was no answer, and Li Fan and others were helpless. But it was just out of curiosity, without much entanglement. Gathering around the established central area of the Locking Spirit Formation, they walked towards it. The final division of labor had been discussed long ago. Shui Mu was responsible for inspecting the previously built formation units, while Zhang Qigi was responsible for fixing and debugging the formation hubs. Li Fan, on the other hand, remained in the middle, moving as needed. Wherever help was needed, he went. Zhang Qigi's formation level was still trustworthy. And Shui Mu had always been diligent and rarely made mistakes. With Li Fan as the coordinator, the three worked together, completing the construction of the Locking Spirit Formation over 2 days faster than originally planned, shrouding the depths of the abyss with imminent completion. As a precaution, they chose the low tide period after the outbreak of the demon sound tide to perform the final steps. After confirmation that everything was correct, the Locking Spirit Formation hub flew out from Emperor Fusang's forehead, turning into a constantly flickering red phantom. Zhang Qigi's expression was extremely solemn as he guided the hub into the prepared core formation. There was no sign of Li Fan's indifference when testing the hub. The red phantom cooperatively flew into the midst of the dense formations. At the moment of its return, the intense green light completely enveloped the red one. Starting from the central singularity, countless rays of light bloomed, connecting with numerous formation units around the Locking Spirit Formation. Penetrating the white mist and spreading outward, each formation structure was lit up one by one. Thus, amidst the vast white mist, such a strange scene appeared. In the white mist, blue light emanated from the central singularity, spreading layer by layer along the veins of the Locking Spirit Formation. In an instant, a magnificent circular blue giant web emerged, covering the entire abyss. The devouring white mist and occasional demonic sounds couldn't obscure its magnificent and majestic figure. Most of those present were the builders of the formation. At this moment, watching their creation, which they had labored over for years, finally come to fruition, they were filled with mixed emotions. Li Fan, on the other hand, stared at the brightest blue spot in the center of the formation and sighed, only with the Tianshuan can spirits be locked. The curtain of the widespread Tianshuan locking spirit formation is finally about to rise. I wonder how the 10,000 Immortals Alliance will evolve in the future. Let's just observe for now. If things really go south, we can resort to the truth directly, Li Fan said. But I've calculated my efforts. With so much hard work, there should be some merits. It's inconceivable that I'll be left with so little lifespan in this world, unable to live out my natural life, right? While Li Fan was pondering inwardly, the Tianshuan formation hub finally completed its integration with the locking spirit formation. The magnificent blue giant web receded like a tide in an instant, but at the same time, Li Fan felt a faint sensation in his heart. It was as if there were eyes above everyone's heads, constantly observing him. Under Emperor Fu Song's leadership, everyone cheered and celebrated the smooth completion of the formation. It seemed that no one noticed. Only Shui Mu, who appeared honest and taciturn, subtly raised his head for a glance. After Emperor Fu Song successfully accepted the inspection, the construction of the formations outside the abyssal roar had come to an end. On the way back to the Severed Palm Immortal City, Li Fan inquired about Emperor Fu Song's next plans. According to the original plan, I will rendezvous with Director Ji and build a locking spirit formation outside the newly discovered, lost battlefield, maze, Emperor Fu Song replied. But, Emperor Fu Song paused, his expression solemn. That maze is rather peculiar and extremely dangerous. After careful evaluation, the Alliance has decided to temporarily suspend the construction of formations in the lost battlefield and instead seal it off. Since you have completed the construction of a locking spirit formation, there will be no mandatory requirements for your future work, Emperor Fu Song continued. In other words, if you wish, you can directly return to rest. Of course, if you want to compete for rankings, you can choose to support the construction of formations in other areas. However, only the headquarters of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance can see the progress of formation construction in various areas and the current personnel in charge. To maximize efficiency in competing for rankings, it's best to resort to some extraordinary means, Emperor Fu Song lightly coughed, wearing an expression that said, "You know what I mean." Shui Mu and Zhang Qigi pondered upon hearing this. They thought about what they had that could impress this senior. Li Fan, however, remained indifferent. My life is nearing its end. Soon, I will journey to the underworld to meet with Taoist anti-Tao. Competing for rankings doesn't matter to me. But I am indeed curious about the lost battlefield that Senior Fu just mentioned. Emperor Fu Song, who had maintained his composure, couldn't help but twitch his face when he heard Li Fan mention anti-Tao again. Suppressing his impulse, he coldly snorted after Li Fan's inquiry and proceeded to answer. It's not really a secret, and there's no harm in telling you. Emperor Fu Song began. As the name suggests, the new maze in the lost battlefield is a relic of an ancient great war. Spanning over 1,600 miles, countless cultivators perished within it. Not only has the thick smell of blood not dissipated, but the fallen cultivators also seem to remain frozen in the moment of their deaths. It's as if this brutal battle occurred just recently. Emperor Fu Song squinted his eyes, as if reminiscing about the sights in the lost battlefield. What's even more bizarre is that we can't distinguish the main parties involved in the conflict. Some wore the same faction attire, some may have perished together in mutual slaughter, while others may have jointly confronted formidable enemies, perishing heroically together. It's more like a chaotic brawl where distinctions blur, rather than a traditional battlefield. Hearing Emperor Fu Song's description, Li Fan couldn't help but recall the previously seen maze of chaos. It seemed as if time had frozen there, with corpses still vividly lifelike. The culprit there was the Heavenly Doctor. Who could be responsible for this lost battlefield? While he was pondering, Shui Mu couldn't help but ask. Senior Fu, you just said that this lost battlefield is extremely dangerous. Why is that? Could it be that the deceased cultivators will come back to life and launch attacks? Emperor Fu Song shook his head, denying, they are already dead and cannot die again. A light touch will turn them into ashes. The real danger comes from the maze itself. When Director Ji led a team into it for the first time, they fell under its influence. While they were awestruck by the scene of the ancient brutal war, Director Ji suddenly found himself besieged by fellow cultivators accompanying him. Besieged? Shui Mu couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Lost, could it be? After a moment, he immediately realized, his face filled with horror. Emperor Fusong nodded slowly. Yes, those cultivators were Director Ji's trusted aides, absolutely loyal and dependable. But even so, once they entered that maze, they lost their minds. Treating Director Ji as a mortal enemy, they attacked without reservation. Chapter 372, Credit where it's due. Where's Director Ji? Has he lost his senses? Li Fan keenly sensed the crux of the issue and spoke up. Wang Fusong glanced at Li Fan and cleared his throat. Director Ji's cultivation is profound and unfathomable. Naturally he wouldn't lose his self-will. Unfortunately, those accompanying cultivators, each with considerable cultivation levels. When they joined forces, Director Ji found it somewhat difficult to withstand. For the sake of self-preservation, Director Ji had no choice but to eliminate them all. Wang Fusong appeared deeply regretful. Li Fan and others were taken aback by his words. Subsequently, they seemed to have some realization but dared not delve deeper. Indeed, it's too dangerous. No wonder it had to be temporarily sealed. Li Fan nodded in agreement. Wang Fusong gave Li Fan a warning glance and transmitted, "Kid, what needed to be told to you has been said. Don't push it." Li Fan just pretended not to hear. "I'll be heading to other regions tomorrow to oversee the construction of formations. If any of you have needs, you can come find me before that." Upon reaching the eternal immortal stronghold, Wang Fusong wore a smile as he addressed Shuimu and Zhang Qigi. As for Li Fan, he didn't even spare them a glance before leaving with a swish of his sleeves. Li Fan didn't mind. After years of hard work, success finally came. The first thing everyone did upon returning to the Severed Palm Immortal City was to check their rankings on the leaderboard. Within these 5 days, there had been earth-shattering changes in the points leaderboard. Zhang Qigi's contribution soared due to his management of the Tianquan array pivot. Li Fan, on the other hand, relied on his previous advantages, having only a slightly higher total points. But both of them had dropped out of the top 10, nearing around the 20th position. Looking at it this way, in these past few days, many places have completed the Tianquan spirit locking array. Even some unfamiliar faces have appeared in the top rankings. I find it somewhat unfair. Building arrays above the abyssal roar is much more difficult compared to ordinary domains. Master Li should have earned more points. Is it possible that the points have been increased due to the difficulty? After all, while the abyssal roar is perilous, it may not necessarily be the most dangerous place in the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Li Fan, look, Guo Yezhong has actually jumped to the 300th position. Amidst the discussions, Shuimu transmitted to Li Fan. I've noticed too. What's your opinion, friend? Li Fan inquired. Everyone's points are not static, but constantly increasing. In this situation, Guo Yezhong actually managed to surpass others. Moreover, it was only after many formations were completed that this explosive advancement occurred. I think, perhaps this person was involved in the initial design of the Tianquan spirit locking array. Though Shuimu seemed taciturn, he was by no means dull. At this moment, he calmly analyzed, Director Ji once said that the number of points is determined based on the contributions to the completion of the formations. And as the founder of the formations, naturally, he deserves credit for each completed one. Only then can we explain the current situation. Li Fan recalled the appearance of Guo Yezhong he saw in the Universal Altar. At that time, he was just a golden core formation master, wasn't he? He asked with a smile. Upon hearing this, Shuimu also felt somewhat hesitant. Perhaps he just came up with one of the ideas. He hesitated. Speculation is pointless. Let's focus on our own tasks. Li Fan advised. Shuimu looked at the aged Li Fan, his expression solemn, nodding in agreement. Participating in the initial design of the Tianquan spirit locking array, then reaping the benefits. Not only can he gain a large number of points out of thin air in this grand competition, but once the spirit locking array is fully popularized, his status and position will undoubtedly rise. It's a good plan. Having parted ways with Shuimu and returning to his own room, Li Fan couldn't help but think so. If time could be turned back 30 years, perhaps there would be no one in this world who understands the Tianquan spirit locking array better than me. Wonderful. Just need to be cautious when revealing it. Li Fan pondered leisurely. After nightfall, Li Fan quietly arrived at Wang Fusong's place. It seemed as if Wang Fusong had long anticipated Li Fan's arrival. There was a bowl of spiritual tea on the table, waiting for him. Green dragon whiskers can extend life by 10 years. It can barely prolong your little life. Wang Fusong said mockingly. Li Fan didn't bother with niceties and drank it all in one go. Licking his lips, he looked at the truth panel. Only increased the upper limit of physiological age by 1 year. It's really just barely. Li Fan shook his head, looking genuinely unimpressed. Wang Fusong chuckled a bit at being teased but didn't dwell on it, instead cutting straight to the point. You said you're a dying man, why push yourself so hard? Living out the rest of my life leisurely, isn't that good? Still thinking about competing on the leaderboard? What are you thinking? In front of Wang Fusong, Li Fan no longer showed the selflessness and integrity as seen by outsiders but changed his rhetoric. It's precisely because the end is near that I must strive harder. Only then can I seek life amidst death and regain a glimmer of hope. Li Fan's words were resolute. Oh, how so? Wang Fusong became interested. Being trapped in the great tide of demonic sounds and the devouring elemental mist was indeed unexpected. Almost depleting my lifespan for help was also beyond my expectations. I still have less than 100 years in this world. Facing death, how can I accept it? Naturally, I want to stay alive. But those longevity treasures are too precious for me. Even if I exhaust my remaining years, I may not be able to obtain one. To stay alive, I naturally have to resort to other methods, a roundabout way to save myself. Although there's no absolute certainty, it's definitely worth the gamble. The gleam in Li Fan's eyes was incongruent with his extremely aged appearance. Wang Fusong became even more curious. A gamble? What are you gambling on? Li Fan's expression was serious as he said, word by word. I'm gambling on the fact that the Alliance won't let down those who have contributed. Especially in the matter of constructing the Tianquan spirit locking array. Wang Fusong stared at Li Fan in astonishment, then drank the green dragon whiskers tea in front of him. Li Fan continued, eloquently, both you and I know the importance of the Tianquan spirit locking array. And my desperate efforts to build the formation have spread throughout the world. Whose handwriting it is, naturally, needs no further explanation. Before all the formations are completed, is it better for me, a worldwide role model, to die miserably, or for the Alliance to come forward and save my life? Compared to the hard work of inspiring formation masters worldwide, a few longevity treasures shouldn't count for much. So, as of now, not only am I not afraid of imminent death, I even feel that I have too much remaining lifespan. Senior Wangfu, that cup of tea you just had almost cost me my life. How do you intend to compensate? After saying this, Li Fan looked quietly at Wang Fusong. Chapter 373. Seemingly false, actually true. Wang Fusong heard Li Fan's somewhat rogue words and couldn't help but feel not annoyed, but rather showed a somewhat approving expression. When I heard about your deeds before, I thought you had been possessed. How come, you have nothing to do with the words, self-sacrifice, and selflessness? It's just that your actions are seen by everyone, and they cannot be faked. I've been puzzled for a long time. Today, your words have dispelled my doubts. Wang Fusong looked at Li Fan and nodded slightly. You, little brat, are ruthless. Li Fan remained unchanged. Senior, you praise too much. I wonder how this compensation will be. Wang Fusong patted his stomach and sneered. You just want to know from me where to compete most efficiently next. Why bother with all these twists and turns? With that, he pointed in front of Li Fan. In an instant, the construction of the Tianquan locking spirit array, which covered most of the current territories of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, and the information of the corresponding array masters, densely and meticulously, entered Li Fan's sight. Not only were the points rankings of each array master on the current big competition leaderboard marked, but even the predictive abilities of each player's future competition were intimately addressed. Wang Fusong proudly said, "This is the top secret list that was newly released yesterday. Although a day has passed, the points will change again. But it can definitely be used as a reference. Ordinary people want to see it, they have to pay a price." Li Fan quickly scanned the contents of the list. After a moment, he frowned slightly. Wang Fusong saw Li Fan's expression and was somewhat surprised. What, Li kid, aren't you satisfied? Senior Wangfu, it seems that some places are missing from this list. Li Fan asked, his gaze piercing. Missing? Impossible. Before Wang Fusong could finish his retort, Li Fan interrupted directly. What about the 5 Elements Great Cave? Wang Fusong froze in place. But Li Fan continued incessantly, as the fuse that caused the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and the 5 Elders. heavenly spirit province to have a great battle thousands of years ago, and now the main source of countless resources within the alliance, such an important place, it's impossible not to set up a Tianquan locking spirit array, right? And what about the endless sea? A training holy land that countless cultivators dream of. Once crossing the sea, they can reach the peak of the current realm in one go. I didn't see it on the list either. Xingzhu Yuan, Gshitian. Although I'm ignorant, I've still heard of these places, Li Fan said. In order to conceal his true intentions, he mentioned many secret and important places in succession. These were all things Li Fan had learned from browsing secret documents in daily life and had not actually visited. However, at this moment, bringing them out to confuse the situation couldn't be better. You know quite a lot. Being exposed by Li Fan, Wang Fusong's expression remained unchanged. With a grumble, Wang Fusong said seriously, let's be direct. You also know the importance of these places. It's simply impossible to let outsiders enter at will. That's right. Building formations in these places does indeed yield several times the contribution of ordinary areas. But the relevant formations are all managed by specific people. You, a junior, without connections or backing, still want to sneak in to earn points. You're really overthinking it. Wang Fusong shook his head repeatedly. Look at the many people on the big competition leaderboard, who among them can do it? Are they stronger than you? Li Fan, faced with Wang Fusong's denial, didn't feel disheartened for a moment. Instead, he seized the key point. Thoughtfully, he said, senior's meaning is, as long as one has connections and a background, it's not impossible to participate in the construction of these formations in these areas, right? Wang Fusong was rendered speechless by Li Fan's unique line of thought. Just as he was about to make a mocking remark, he saw Li Fan deep in thought, and inexplicably, he felt a shock in his heart. Could it be that you really have some backing? Wang Fusong asked suspiciously. Li Fan, however, didn't directly answer, just smiled faintly. Just doing what one can, that's all. Perhaps this matter will still require Senior Wangfu's mediation in the future. These ambiguous words made Wang Fusong even more uncertain. If there's anything I can do, I'll contact Senior again later. I hope Senior will help me when the time comes. Li Fan said politely. With that, he was about to leave the room. Watching Li Fan's departing figure, Wang Fusong's gaze flickered. After hesitating for a moment, he couldn't help but ask. Regarding Dantai Dao, Li Fan didn't stop walking, and in an instant, he had disappeared from Wang Fusong's sight. Only a faint voice lingered, echoing in the room. Just a joke from a junior. If Senior feels bothered by it after helping me several times, then I won't mention it again in the future. Wang Fusong stared in the direction where Li Fan disappeared, his expression inexplicable. With a cold snort, he slammed the door of the room shut. Li Fan remained composed and returned to his own residence. Li Fan wasn't sure whether the untimely death of Dantai Dao and the others was really related to Wang Fusong. However, when Li Fan initially casually mentioned Dantai Dao to tease Wang Fusong, he noticed a hint of strangeness in his somewhat overreacted expression. He even faintly felt a killing intent directed towards him. Although it was almost imperceptible, Li Fan, who had mastered the formless killing intent, was extremely sensitive to murderous intent. It could be basically confirmed that at that moment, Wang Fusong did indeed have the thought of killing Li Fan. This made Li Fan somewhat curious. So, from then on, Li Fan continuously used the death of Dantai Dao to test Wang Fusong's bottom line. What surprised him was that whenever Li Fan mentioned Dantai Dao, Wang Fusong really became somewhat more agreeable. And because of this, his attitude towards Li Fan was also different from that towards other disciples. Until today, Wang Fusong's question. It was considered to confirm that there was indeed some connection between him and the deaths of Dantai Dao and the other disciples. The possibility of him personally taking action was unlikely, otherwise, he should have been dealt with long ago. However, it was still possible that he had done things like revealing information about Dantai Dao and the others. This was also why Wang Fusong was somewhat sensitive to the three words, Dantai Dao. Because he couldn't stand serious investigation. Although time had passed, and the names of Dantai Dao and the others had been almost forgotten by the vast majority of people. But Li Fan always brought it up in front of Wang Fusong every once in a while. And indeed, it made him somewhat uneasy. Li Fan naturally understood the principle of moderation. Since Wang Fusong had made his intentions clear today, it would be impossible for Li Fan to pretend to be ignorant as he did before. The conveyed meaning was also very clear, as long as you help me one last time. Then from now on, I will never mention this matter again. Li Fan had already obtained plenty of information from Wang Fusong, and it wouldn't be good to push him too far. Li Fan made this statement without any reluctance. Chapter 374, 10,000 Miles of Burning Sands. Li Fan and Wang Fusong had vastly different levels of strength and status. Naturally, threats carried risks. However, due to the strange phenomena that occur after a cultivator's death, it was difficult to kill and silence someone without being discovered. Moreover, Li Fan had now become a role model for the world, living under the spotlight. Even if Wang Fusong wanted to act, he had to consider the consequences. Wang Fusong was certainly not prepared or determined to exchange his life for Li Fan's. Compromise was inevitable. Therefore, although this move seemed dangerous, it was well within Li Fan's plan. The Great Five Elements subworld. Li Fan pondered for a moment, closed his eyes, and began to connect with Lu Shuijing, whom he had not contacted since he subdued her. The fisherman's methods were indeed incredibly mysterious. Even in the thick white fog, he could communicate with his subordinate from an unknown distance at any time. Master. Feeling Li Fan's summons, after a moment, Lu Shuijing's timid voice sounded. Without any small talk after a long time of no contact, Li Fan directly inquired about her recent situation. After understanding her general circumstances, Li Fan thought for a while and then asked about her mother's whereabouts. The loyal Lu Shuijing told him everything truthfully. My mother has been very busy recently, constantly patrolling various subworlds. These are places I've never heard of. Sometimes she even loses contact for a long time. Listening to this, Li Fan slowly formed a plan. Before ending the contact, Li Fan comforted and praised the young girl. Lu Shuijing was extremely excited, her soft voice very pleasing to the ear. After instructing her on the planned matters, Li Fan reluctantly ended the communication. Whether the plan succeeds or not depends on my luck, Li Fan thought to himself. Fortunately, Li Fan's luck was not bad. The next day, when Wang Fusong was about to depart from Duanzhong Immortal City on the dust-crossing boat, Li Fan received a message from Lu Shuijing. A gleam of light flashed in Li Fan's eyes as he flew onto the dust-crossing boat. What do you want now, boy? Wang Fusong's expression was unfriendly as he looked at the intruding Li Fan. He dismissed the others and took Li Fan to a closed cabin. His cold eyes fixed on Li Fan, waiting for his explanation. To compete for rankings, I want to make a desperate effort. Other aspects have been taken care of, but now I need senior's help one more time. Wang Fusong was stunned. So soon? He narrowed his eyes, observing Li Fan carefully. After a moment of thought, he asked, what do you want me to do? Li Fan said in a low voice, I want senior to change course and take me to the Green River Deep Gorge as quickly as possible. Green River Deep Gorge? Wang Fusong was slightly surprised. Why do you want to go there? Li Fan did not answer, instead he continued with his request. And, you need to find a legitimate reason so that it doesn't look abrupt to others. Wang Fusong sneered, you sure have a lot of demands. He did not refuse outright but fell into a long silence, seemingly contacting someone. Li Fan stood still, waiting patiently. After a cup of tea's time, Wang Fusong nodded slightly and looked at Li Fan again. You're in luck. I have a friend currently overseeing the construction of an array at Green River Deep Gorge. The construction is nearly complete, and his next destination is close to mine. We haven't seen each other in a long time, so I'll meet him and catch up, Wang Fusong said succinctly. Li Fan was delighted and bowed, thank you, senior. Wang Fusong put away his smile, don't play games with me. I'm helping you because I want to see who your backer really is. Li Fan replied seriously, senior overthinks. I am a lone wolf, with no backing to speak of. Wang Fusong, seeing that Li Fan was still pretending to be ignorant, did not argue further. He simply sneered. How long will it take to reach Green River Deep Gorge? Li Fan asked nonchalantly. If we're quick, 2 days, if slow, 7 days. It depends on any unforeseen circumstances along the way, Wang Fusong answered impatiently. Just wait patiently, since I promised you, I won't mess around. Li Fan nodded slightly and thanked him again. The sudden change of destination for the dust-crossing boat surprised the cultivators on board. However, since it was Wang Fusong who commanded it, they did not dare to voice any objections. The dust-crossing boat turned into a red light, piercing through the devouring white mist and moving rapidly. After leaving the white mist barrier, it first flew to the nearest Qiang Immortal city and used the teleportation array there to reach a barren land filled with scorched earth. Then, it continued to speed towards its goal. This is the 10,000 miles of burning sands, and Green River Deep Gorges deep within, Wang Fusong explained as he noticed Li Fan curiously observing the outside scenery. Even with the array's barrier, Li Fan could still feel the intense heat from the outside. It was a pure, destructive force that seemed to burn everything in its path. The sky and earth seemed to be filled with dark red energy. The ground was cracked, and the sky seemed to be burning with flames. 1,000 years ago, this place was also a good place. Unfortunately, it has now turned into this hellish sight. Wang Fusong sighed, moved by the desolate scene. If it weren't for the uniqueness of Green River Deep Gorge, the Alliance would have abandoned this area long ago. What is special about Green River Deep Gorge? Li Fan asked, following up on Wang Fusong's words. You don't know. Wang Fusong was genuinely surprised. Then why are you in such a hurry to go there? Li Fan showed an innocent expression, making Wang Fusong's face twitch. However, his good temper kept him from getting angry. Instead, he explained again, Green River Deep Gorge itself isn't special. But it produces a greenish stone that has a strong suppressive effect on spiritual energy. For us cultivators, without special countermeasures, approaching it would cause all our spiritual energy to be suppressed, making us as weak as mortals. This stone is called Spirit Transformation Stone by the Alliance. Upon hearing this, Li Fan felt that the stone seemed familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. But he couldn't recall it. Li Fan realized that it might be related to the vanished avatar's experiences, so he didn't dwell on it. After thinking for a while, Li Fan asked again, I once read about an ancient stone called Juexian Stone. It seems to have similar effects to the Spirit Transformation Stone. Are they the same thing? Chapter 375, Green River Deep Gorge. It seemed that Li Fan's extensive knowledge was already taken for granted. Li Fan could pose such a tricky and peculiar question, and Wang Fusong was not surprised in the least. Instead, he smirked and retorted, if you ask me, who should I ask? If you're really curious, why not experience it yourself later? Being teased by Wang Fusong, Li Fan didn't mind. From his limited understanding, since the Tianxuan mirror had 1,000 threads of connection with the ancient treasure of the Xuantian sect, the Xuantian treasure mirror, then the Spirit Transformation Stone and the Immortal Stone were very likely the same thing. Wang Fusong's words actually hit the nail on the head and were not wrong. He had used the Immortal Stone in the fallen immortal realm before. When he sees the Spirit Transformation Stone again later, he will naturally know whether these two are the same thing or not. Thousands of miles of blazing flames, truly a vast expanse of land. After flying swiftly for several days on the dust-crossing boat, all Li Fan saw was the unchanging desolation of the apocalypse. Only the scorching heat endured between heaven and earth, with no traces of any other life. During this journey, there were also occasional bursts of molten fire erupting from the ground suddenly. Like dark red dragons leaping into the abyss, they stirred up chaos and turmoil in the surrounding space. Facing such terrifying circumstances, the dust-crossing boat had no choice but to detour. Danger came not only from underground. Deadly crises could also descend from overhead at any moment. Irregularly, meteors would suddenly fall from the sky like flowing stars, colliding with the ground and erupting with terrifying energy that devastated everything. Li Fan once saw a huge fire meteor falling in the distance. The shockwave it brought along with the scorching fire blew the dust-crossing boat like a floating duckweed in the wind, losing control and tumbling incessantly. What kind of place is this? In the thousands of miles of blazing flames, every step was perilous, a slight carelessness could mean death. Li Fan, seeing such a dangerous territory for the first time, couldn't help but feel a bit solemn. Fortunately, the helmsman Wang Fusong was experienced and had been here before. After a total of 5 days, the group finally arrived safely at their destination, the Spirit Transformation Gorge. Even without Wang Fusong's notification, Li Fan knew from a distance. It was simply because the Spirit Transformation Gorge was too conspicuous and unique in the thousands of miles of blazing flames. A long and winding green ravine abruptly spanned the red earth. As if an inexplicable scar had appeared, extending deep into the ground. Along the way, the seemingly destructive molten fire kept spewing and encroaching upon the deep green gorge. However, in the moment of nearing, everything instantly completed the transformation from red to green. The molten fire turned into a cyan stream of air, rising high into the sky. Be careful, there might be a little turbulence ahead. As the dust-crossing boat rushed into the spirit transformation gorge, Wang Fu Song's kind reminder suddenly sounded in Li Fan's ears. Before the words had even settled, the flying dust-crossing boat lost power in an instant. Even the momentum to move forward vanished, until it fell to the bottom of the deep gorge. And Li Fan also felt the powerful aura of annihilation within the spirit transformation gorge, which was no different from an ordinary person. Instantly, his heart felt as if it had been lifted. Within the dust-crossing boat, intermittent exclamations were heard. Just as Li Fan almost thought that disaster was imminent, a powerful stream of air gushed out inexplicably from the bottom of the spirit transformation gorge and collided head-on with the falling dust-crossing boat. As if being swept by a gale, the boat shook violently, and its speed gradually slowed down. When the airflow disappeared, the dust-crossing boat also managed to stop precariously. "Come out, all of you." In Wang Fu Song's command, everyone stepped out of the cabin and onto the deck. "Ha ha ha, brother Wang Fu, safe and sound, I see." A hearty laughter suddenly rang out, and not long after, a lean man with a bare upper body leapt from below and landed directly on the dust-crossing boat. With a bang, the movement was quite significant. The entire boat swayed slightly. "Brother Dongfang, long time no see." Wang Fu Song's fat face immediately lit up with a smile. He warmly approached and embraced Dongfang. "It's been 23 years since we parted ways at the Thousand Pages Forest. Brother Dongfang, you're still as impressive as ever." After the two men released each other, Wang Fu Song looked Dongfang up and down, praising him with admiration. "Not comparable to brother Wang Fu's continuous cultivation progress, which makes me envious." Dongfang had no reservations, patting Wang Fu Song's big belly and laughing. Wang Fu Song showed no signs of annoyance, it's mutual admiration. While the two exchanged pleasantries, Li Fan also observed this renowned cultivator named Dongfang in secret. From him, Li Fan also didn't sense any trace of spiritual energy fluctuations. Just now, when he leapt from the deep gorge below onto the dust-crossing boat, it seemed entirely accomplished through his physical body alone. Although his body seemed somewhat frail, the sharp and distinct muscle lines revealed the explosive strength contained within. This was the first time Li Fan had encountered someone with such a strong physique. "Brother Wang Fu, rest here for a few days. At most half a month, the grand formation here will be completed," Dongfang said to Wang Fu Song. After speaking, a strange cry suddenly emanated from his throat. Li Fan narrowed his eyes slightly, feeling that the sound was somewhat familiar. Suddenly, the earth beneath his feet, where the dust-crossing boat was located, began to shake. A distant and loud roar echoed from the earth. Subsequently, this piece of land began to move and fly. Continuing downwards, it plunged deep into the spirit transformation gorge. "This is boundary rupture whale." Li Fan was slightly startled. Amidst the exclamations of the people on the boat, he finally saw that what was carrying the dust-crossing boat was not land at all. It was a huge black beast. From its appearance, it was extremely similar to the boundary rupture whale that Li Fan had seen before, which sealed off mortal worlds. The airflow that just prevented the dust-crossing boat from crashing seems to have also come from this beast. As the giant beast continued to dive deeper, Li Fan observed carefully, lost in thought. "It's not a boundary rupture whale, it's much smaller in size. It just looks similar." The spirit transformation gorge seemed bottomless, and even after flying for a long time, the giant beast still hadn't reached the bottom. On the cliffs on both sides, many exposed green stones could be seen. Some cultivators dressed in peculiar clothing were suspended in midair. Holding hammers and nails made of unknown materials, they were mining the spirit transformation stones. Occasionally, one could also encounter formation masters wearing the standard attire of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, hurriedly passing by the giant beast. They seemed unaffected by the spirit transformation stones and could still use the spiritual energy within their bodies. After all, the spirit transformation gorge was not a true bottomless abyss. After about half a day's time, with a cheerful roar from the whale-like creature, everyone finally arrived at the bottom of the spirit transformation gorge. A long river of green traversed the deep gorge. Chapter 376, Chief Lu arrives. Many buildings were erected above the turquoise river, supported only by several stone pillars. The giant whale beast expelled a stream of air, gently placing the dust-crossing boat on a spacious platform. Then it leapt into the river below. A bizarre scene unfolded. Despite its immense size, the beast jumped into the Qing River without splashing a drop of water. Only rippling circles emerged, indicating that the whale's leap was no illusion. Dongfang led everyone off the dust-crossing boat, walking along the corridor towards the nearby cluster of buildings. Walking on the Qing River, everyone felt somewhat scared, fearing the collapse of the pillars below and falling into the river. This turquoise river seemed to be of the same origin as the Spirit Stone. Countless rivers converged, suppressing spiritual energy to its limit here, causing Li Fan's internal strength to completely dissipate. Devoid of cultivation support, Li Fan, nearing his limit, felt the effects of aging more pronounced. Even walking a few steps became somewhat wheezy. It seemed like he might collapse any second. Amidst the shock, Li Fan tried to call upon truth and found it still responsive. Only then did he relax. This ghostly place is only suitable for people like you. Even if it's not the first time here, I still can't get used to it. After walking for a while, they finally arrived at a hall. Wang Fusong wiped the sweat from his forehead, sighing. There's no other choice. The quantity of life pearls is limited. Constructing the grand formation is urgent and cannot be delayed. They're all distributed to subordinates to expedite progress, with none to spare. Otherwise, I could have given one to Brother Wangfu for emergencies, Dongfang said with a smile. Wang Fusong waved his hand. The mission is urgent, the mission is urgent. Finish the tasks quickly, then leave this ghostly place. Dongfang nodded, about to say something when his expression suddenly changed. A streak of blue light suddenly flew in from outside, stopping directly in front of him. Li Fan looked over, surprised to see a small, blue bird fluttering its wings incessantly, chirping, as if conveying a message. Dongfang seemed to understand this bird language. With the blue bird's chirping, he abruptly stood up, his expression turning more solemn. I understand, you may go now, Dongfang said. The bird transformed into blue light, disappearing instantly. What's wrong? Seeing Dongfang's guarded demeanor, Wang Fusong couldn't help but ask curiously. Dongfang bowed slightly. Brother Wangfu, forgive me for not accompanying you. I received a sudden notice. The chief is about to come for inspection, so I need to make good use of time to inspect again, to prevent any oversights. Wang Fusong was also taken aback by his words. He quickly stood up and asked, the chief? Which chief? Dongfang smiled bitterly, who else could make me this nervous? Of course, it's the highest chief. Wang Fusong was somewhat horrified. Lu. Before he could finish, Dongfang interrupted him. Shish, it's enough that Brother Wangfu knows, remember not to spread it. Learning that the leader's leader was about to come for inspection, Wang Fusong also became nervous. Understood, understood. Official matters are urgent, Brother Dongfang, go busy yourself. This rumored figure is not so easy to deal with. Wangfu nodded in agreement, about to say something more, but suddenly froze in place. The shock on his face couldn't be concealed any longer as he turned abruptly towards Li Fan, who was sitting quietly nearby with closed eyes. It seemed the aging Li Fan wasn't paying any attention to their conversation. Is this the reason he came here? How could this be? Coincidence, or, Wang Fusong was not an ordinary person after all. After a moment, he suppressed the unusual color on his face. Dongfang seemed to sense something and glanced in the direction of Li Fan. But he didn't inquire further, bidding farewell and leaving. After Dongfang left, Wang Fusong couldn't contain himself any longer, calling Li Fan into an empty room. Lowering his voice, he stared at Li Fan intently. Kid, did you know Chief Lu was coming? Li Fan just smiled faintly, neither denying nor confirming. Seeing this, Wang Fusong understood. He then took a sharp intake of breath. As a member of the Tianyu Province's Formation Hall, Wang Fusong knew well the lofty status of Chief Lu. Not to mention her own cultivation, just her authority as the chief formation master of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, commanding all formation affairs within the alliance, could crush Wang Fusong as easily as one would a mere ant. All the formation masters of the Formation Hall in the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, strictly speaking, were under her command. And Chief Lu's methods were ruthless and cold. The group of people who once contended with her for the chief position, shortly after she took office, were all suppressed for various reasons. Disappeared from the mortal world. Such blatant retaliatory actions not only did not provoke opposition. Instead, they gained strong support from the highest decision-making level of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Then, her series of vigorous reform measures, as well as several severe punishment methods, all made the formation masters of the Formation Hall silent. Even Wang Fusong once heard Ji Hongdao mention casually that the widespread dissemination plan of the Tianshuan soul-locking formation was proposed by this Chief Lu. Countless rumors about her in the past kept surfacing in Wang Fusong's mind. Wang Fusong's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. This was such a big shot. How could this unremarkable, seemingly unfounded little guy in front of him know her whereabouts days in advance? What did this imply? Even if his backing wasn't Chief Lu herself, he must be very close to Chief Lu. Thinking of this, Wang Fusong couldn't help but feel a little dry in his mouth. No wonder every time I look at this kid, I feel his aura is extraordinary, far from ordinary. So he really has a powerful backing, and it's so solid. Memories of Li Fan's experiences flashed through Wang Fusong's mind one by one, and he suddenly realized. No wonder he was so indifferent even when fighting for the rankings, despite being on the verge of death. So he's fearless. No wonder his selfless dedication spread so quickly, almost throughout the entire 10,000 Immortals Alliance. So it was premeditated, all this self-sacrifice. It turns out he was just seizing this opportunity for personal gain. Several thoughts flashed through his mind, cursing inwardly. Regardless of his inner complaints, Wang Fusong still put on a bright smile. Li Xiao, Li Fan, my young friend, truly a hidden gem. With such a relationship, why bother hiding it? You're treating me like an outsider. Li Fan remained unchanged. Senior Wang Fu, I wonder what you've guessed. But, I'm sure you've misunderstood. Junior, there's absolutely no powerful backing behind me. He said seriously, acting, still pretending here. Just afraid of negative influence, that's all. Thinking like this inwardly, but Wang Fusong immediately nodded solemnly, I understand. Chapter 377, Catalyzing the Spirit Pearl. Li Fan, seeing the situation, just smiled and didn't explain further. Wang Fusong, however, didn't intend to let him off so easily, even though the two hadn't had much interaction. But that didn't stop him from acting as if he were very familiar with Li Fan, enthusiastically engaging him. Senior Wang Fu, how often do you usually see Chief Lu? Li Fan responded casually, and seeing Wang Fusong's incessant chatter, he couldn't help but interrupt and ask. Wang Fusong couldn't help but be stunned. With some embarrassment, he replied, Chief Lu's status. Before he could finish speaking, Li Fan meaningfully interjected, in that case, the opportunity is right in front of you. Senior Wang Fu, why not take the opportunity to make a good impression? Wang Fusong was momentarily taken aback, then as if awakened from a dream. He exclaimed, you're right. If I have the chance to enter Chief Lu's eyes, the road to success is right in front of me. You can tell me these words. But in front of others, it's better to be cautious, Li Fan reminded again. Understood, Wang Fusong nodded quickly. He then hurriedly left the place to find an opportunity to perform. Only then did Li Fan find peace. Being able to know Chief Lu's whereabouts in advance was naturally through Lu Shuijing's secret communication. However, it stopped there. He didn't ask her to do more. It's not that Li Fan suddenly became kind-hearted, but he deeply understood that in front of Chief Lu, such a top-notch expert in the world, any slight abnormality in behavior might be noticed. The fisherman's methods were indeed mysterious, but whether they could withstand the scrutiny of the top powers of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance was still unknown. When it came to his own safety, Li Fan naturally had to be extremely cautious. The so-called layout was not even worth mentioning. With golden core cultivation, attempting to scheme against Dao integration Immortals was simply seeking death. Li Fan wouldn't be foolish to that extent. What he did was merely creating an encounter opportunity with Chief Lu. As for what would happen after the meeting, as Li Fan had said before, whether it succeeds or not, it all depends on fate. Since Dongfang learned of Chief Lu's impending inspection, the atmosphere at the entire Hualing Gorge suddenly changed. There wasn't a single idle person around, everyone was in a hurry, with solemn expressions. Every cultivator was hurriedly moving about, their faces grave. Wang Fusong himself repeatedly checked the parts where the formation was already completed, fearing any oversights. The heavy atmosphere of preparation made the various cultivators who followed Wang Fusong here unable to sit still. Moreover, seeing Wang Fusong, who had always been somewhat lazy, unexpectedly busy, they were not dull-witted people and immediately guessed that some big shot might be coming to inspect. So they volunteered one after another to help out. Having obtained a batch of elite assistants for no reason, the lean man named Dongfang naturally wouldn't refuse. Inside the Hualing Gorge, without a special response method, even cultivators found it difficult to move a step. For this reason, Dongfang urgently requested a batch of spirit pearls, so that Li Fan and the others could move freely. These were brought by Senior Dongfang Yao and are allocated to you all, said a 7 or 8-year-old child in black and white Taoist robes, with a clear and bright appearance. He took out a white jade bottle from his bosom and extracted colorful, chaotic round beads from it, distributing them to everyone. Swallow them orally and place them in your dantian. You'll be able to sense the flow of spiritual energy again. Although the child looked extremely young, he was quite experienced in explaining the usage and precautions of the spirit pearls. Li Fan held the colorful spirit pearls in his hand, observed them for a moment, and didn't see anything unusual for the time being. He swallowed one. As the spirit pearl entered his abdomen, various colored lights surged from it, spreading throughout his body. As if it were a medicinal catalyst, it stirred up the dormant spiritual energy within his body. The spiritual energy suppressed by the Hualing Gorge also recovered its vitality in an instant. Although there was still a gap compared to fully unleashing it outside, it was barely enough to sustain the daily work needed. Rather than saying it's lifting the suppression, it's more like a catalyst, enhancing the efficiency of spiritual energy reactions, thus partially offsetting the deadening effect of the Hualing Gorge. In that case, if these spirit pearls are taken in the ordinary areas outside, wouldn't Li Fan felt the peculiar spiritual energy mixed within him, pondering. Just as he was contemplating, the child in front of him said, "The effect of the spirit pearls lasts for 30 days. You must pay attention to its expiration date." Quote, "There have been cases where cultivators were too engrossed in their work, forgot about the duration. After the effect expired, their spiritual power was completely depleted, and they fell from the sky, directly killed by the fall. If you no longer want to use it midway, you can circulate your spiritual power and expel the remaining spirit pearls from your body." Hearing this, the cultivators nodded one after another. "Oh, one more thing. Before leaving this Hualing Gorge, either wait for the spirit pearl's effect to completely disappear, or directly expel the spirit pearl. Don't forget, otherwise, there's a risk of spiritual energy explosion. Of course, if you have a physique as strong as Senior Dongfang Yao's and aren't afraid of spiritual energy turmoil, then just ignore what I said." The child left no detail unaddressed, having said what needed to be said. He bowed to everyone and then, in full view of everyone, transformed into a single-footed white bird and flew away. With the assistance of the spirit pearls, everyone regained their vitality and immediately threw themselves into the construction support of the formation. With a practiced hand, they quickly blended into the atmosphere of the Hualing Gorge. And so, a day passed. Li Fan, who was conducting a check on the formation units, suddenly felt something and stopped his work, looking up. He saw a rainbow crossing the sky, tearing through the dark red of the burning ember wasteland for thousands of miles, heading straight for the Hualing Gorge below. The calm green river seemed to sense something, waves rippling without wind. The suppression suddenly rose by a level, catching the cultivators who could only move freely with the help of the spirit pearls off guard. The imbalance of spiritual power nearly caused them to fall from the sky. At this moment, Li Fan saw countless transparent patterns emanating from the rainbow. Expanding outward continuously, like a sky-covering curtain, it instantly enveloped the entire Hualing Gorge. Formation. Li Fan looked up, his eyes flashing with brilliance. The patterns flickered, and in an instant, a large formation took shape. The calm green river seemed to be heavily pressed down, instantly becoming tranquil, with the surface of the river even slightly lowering as a whole. The cultivators within the formation all felt a sense of relief. The suppression effect of the Hualing Gorge seemed to disappear in an instant. Under the escort of more than 10 black-clad cultivators, Lu Shichen, dressed in white, stepped on the rainbow light. She descended in front of everyone. "Greetings, Chief." Dongfang Yao and Wang Fusang hurriedly flew forward, bowing respectfully. Lu Shichen swept her gaze over the two, her expression cold. "Let's go, take me to see the progress of the formation construction." Talk. Next chapter. Chapter 378. The hidden mystery of Tianquan. After Li Fan and the others disappeared from the sight of the crowd, the cultivators present were extremely excited. They communicated with each other using their spiritual senses. "We knew a big shot was coming, but we never expected it to be Senior Disciple Lu. Excuse my ignorance, but who exactly is this Senior Disciple Lu? Are you kidding me, brother? Which province are you from if you don't even know the name of our chief formation master from the array hall? With senior disciple Lu's mastery in Tao integration, she can sweep through the entire Hualing Gorge with just a thought. Does she really need to inspect each place separately? You don't understand. It's necessary to maintain appearances. If she just comes and goes without seriously inspecting any place, wouldn't it seem? Brother, watch your words. Li Fan did not participate in this lively discussion. He simply proceeded with the examination of the formation units as if nothing had happened. Because he faintly sensed a vast spiritual sense continuously scanning above the Hualing Gorge. Everyone knows they need to keep up appearances, yet they foolishly discuss under others' noses using their spiritual senses. Do they really think spiritual communication is absolutely safe? Li Fan shook his head inwardly. He maintained his composure, refusing to engage in such reckless behavior. After the initial excitement, an order was issued, causing everyone to groan in misery. The senior will depart in 2 days. Before that, everyone needed to work harder. They had to complete the construction of the Tianquan locking spirit array thoroughly. Although the original progress was almost sufficient, now they had to compress the schedule forcefully into 2 days. The suddenly increased workload was nearly tripled. But since the command came directly from Dongfang Yao, the wording was extremely stern. People knew senior disciple Lu was present, so they didn't dare to complain. They could only work desperately. Fortunately for Li Fan, continuous work without rest was just ordinary for him. His expression remained unchanged, without any variation. To prevent mistakes during the busy period, Wang Fusong and Dongfang Yao also appeared from time to check the progress. As for senior disciple Lu herself, after showing herself that day, she never appeared in front of everyone again. No one knew what she was busy with. But the massive spiritual sense enveloping the Hualing Gorge never left for a moment. So Li Fan diligently continued his work, showing no signs of abnormality. Time flew by amidst everyone's dedicated efforts. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had already passed. Just as the Tianquan Array Hub and Locking Spirit Array were about to take shape completely, senior disciple Lu finally appeared again. Let me install this Tianquan mirror myself, she proposed, surprising everyone. Although it was unexpected, no one dared to disobey senior disciple Lu's command. Dongfang Yao looked a bit nervous as he handed the red phantom formed by the Tianquan Array Hub to Lu Shichen. In the central core area of the formation, amidst the attention of everyone present, senior disciple Lu placed the Tianquan mirror. The mirror seemed extremely familiar to her. Almost without manipulation, it cleverly found its position and began to integrate with the surrounding formation. It looked exactly like the scene Li Fan witnessed outside the abyss of roaring depths. One after another, green rays of light expanded outward from the central hub of the formation. Li Fan keenly sensed that there seemed to be a slight difference in the Tianquan locking spirit array here compared to the one he constructed. He didn't show any abnormality on his face. His thoughts raced. What's different? If one were to simply examine it from the perspective of formation knowledge, senior disciple Lu's actions could be described as flawless, with no discernible flaws. But Li Fan couldn't shake off the feeling that somewhere in the key points of the Tianquan locking spirit array, there was a subtle change. Quietly watching the formation take shape, that feeling of being constantly under surveillance reappeared. Li Fan's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly realized where his feeling came from. Just as the construction of the Tianquan locking spirit array was completed in an instant, the previously unknown formation with transparent patterns enveloping the Hualing Gorge also dissipated at the same time. And the massive spiritual sense Li Fan had sensed during this time was also nowhere to be found. Everything seemed to fall into place naturally. Even if someone noticed, they would only think that senior disciple Lu had withdrawn her spiritual power after the formation was completed. But Li Fan didn't think so. A bold idea suddenly emerged in his mind. Whether it was the formation that unfolded similarly to the Tianquan locking spirit array, or the remarkably similar surveillance effect, it couldn't help but make Li Fan speculate wildly. It hasn't disappeared. Has it merged? Have the two merged into one? Or is it just lurking? Li Fan's gaze remained as calm as ever, but his mind was in turmoil. Is this to leave a backdoor for oneself within the Tianquan locking spirit array? As the first Tao integration formation master to propose the Tianquan locking spirit array plan, Lu Shichen undoubtedly had the ability to do so. But her motives left Li Fan puzzled. Is it to prevent the potential loss of control of the Tianquan locking spirit array in the future? So, she took this action. Or is there another purpose? Once the Tianquan locking spirit becomes widespread, mastering it means holding supreme power. Even the chief formation master of the array hall is just a formation master. There is still quite a distance from reaching the pinnacle of real power. Perhaps, leveraging the Tianquan locking spirit, one could achieve a qualitative leap. Or even catch a glimpse of the immortal realm. As Li Fan's thoughts continued to diverge, the Tianquan locking spirit array, which had been completely formed due to senior disciple Lu's personal operation, elicited thunderous applause from the cultivators inside the Huoling Gorge. Lu Shichen also rarely showed a hint of a smile. With a gentle expression, she looked down at the cultivators below. As her gaze swept over the face of an old man with snowy white hair, her eyes suddenly froze. Where had she seen this person before? Lu Shichen felt somewhat surprised. But he was just a golden core cultivator, unlikely to catch her attention. Her thoughts raced, memories flooding her mind incessantly. In an instant, they stopped at a few years ago, when her daughter, Lu Shuijing, disappeared for a while before returning. Due to her reckless arrogance, Lu Shuijing had been kidnapped by an old fisherman. Fortunately, a cultivator managed to retrieve her using the items he carried. Her daughter, saved from a perilous situation, wanted to express her gratitude to the cultivator. But he seemed to be in a hurry and left abruptly. She didn't know anything about her savior's life, only remembering his face. At that time, her daughter had described the appearance of the cultivator to her using the water mirror technique. She had memorized it immediately. It should be this person. But why had he aged so much in just a few years? Who was that person? Lu Shichen transmitted her voice to Dongfang Yao. As expected. Seeing both senior disciple Lu and brother Dongfang look towards Li Fan simultaneously, Wang Fusong secretly commented in his heart. Chapter 379, Conflict amongst Transmission Masters. There was a slight nervousness in Dongfang Yao's heart. This person's name is Li Fan, he is. Being concise, she briefly introduced Li Fan's life to Luxi Chan. Although Huang Fusu did not actively mention this person's information, Dongfang Yao sensed something unusual in his gaze towards Li Fan that day. Knowing well what kind of person her brother was, Dongfang Yao immediately investigated secretly. Whether it was the various extraordinary actions rumored about Li Fan, or the astonishing deeds spreading rapidly, Dongfang Yao believed that this person was not simple. Perhaps the reason Huang Fusu came unexpectedly might be because of Li Fan. And when Chief Luxi suddenly asked, it indeed confirmed her speculation. However, there were some things, even if guessed, couldn't be spoken. Dongfang Yao naturally understood this very well. As a subordinate, the key was to cooperate well with the leader. If one acted too clever and disrupted someone's plan above, having no future prospects would be a minor issue. It's just that one might end up dying inexplicably. Thinking of this, Dongfang Yao dared not be negligent and meticulously recounted the surface information she had gathered. Luxi Chan noticed that these two subordinates seemed to have some ulterior motives. However, she didn't intend to delve deeper. Because there weren't many things in this world worthy of her attention, and these two nascent soul formation masters obviously weren't among them. It was her daughter's unexpected savior who caught her attention. She had heard of Li Fan's name before. Being able to risk his life to save others in danger was indeed very rare in today's era. What's more important was that even at the end of his lifespan, he could still hold the front line in formation construction, which was worthy of being touted and celebrated. Perhaps this person was truly a saint by nature, with high morality, or perhaps the techniques he cultivated were special, and this action was purely profitable. For the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, it didn't matter. What mattered was that he really did those things. What mattered was that the majority of cultivators in the world believed in him so much. For the name of a foundation establishment stage cultivator to reach her ears, there must be some familiar hands behind the scenes. Luxi Chan was not surprised by this. If she guessed correctly, if Li Fan were to fall before completing the formation, there would still be someone within the alliance to save his life. Like using 1,000 pieces of gold to buy a horse, they are doing another round of publicity. Everything must be fully utilized, which can also be considered as the consistent means of action for that group of people. A few figures of transmission masters flashed through Luxi Chan's mind, and a shadow suddenly surged in her heart. As the first group of people who actively followed the Transmission Celestial and established the initial 10,000 Immortals Alliance, Transmission Masters had been in control of the highest ruling power of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance since the disappearance of the Celestial. Regardless of cultivation level, none of them were inferior to Luxi Chan. Just the ability to survive countless calamities over thousands of years until now made everyone not dare to underestimate them. Not to mention, they also subtly held the method to restrain the Tianquan mirror. The Tianquan soul lock is just the first step. Luxi Chan snorted coldly in her heart, suppressing her thoughts. Her gaze then fell on the aged cultivator below. Thinking they have everything under control, unaware of what reaction there might be if I intervene. Before this, although he had been her daughter's savior, Luxi Chan didn't have the intention to specially repay the favor. After all, he had saved her daughter without asking for anything in return and left in a hurry. In Luxi Chan's eyes, it meant that Li Fan had given up this opportunity himself. However, now this person appeared before her as a pawn of that group of people, which made Luxi Chan change her mind. After a brief contemplation, she checked Li Fan's ranking on the Great Comparison Golden List. 45th. Perhaps I can lend him a hand. Thinking of this, she looked at Dongfang Yaoyao and Huang Fusu, asking, what do you think of this person? Huang Fusu and Dongfang Yaoyao glanced at each other, murmuring in their hearts. If you specifically ask like this, can we still speak ill of him? Having a backstage is indeed great. With envy in their hearts, the two of them praised Li Fan one after another, exaggerating his achievements. They made him seem like someone from heaven, incomparable to anyone on earth. If Li Fan were here to hear these praises about himself, he would probably blush involuntarily. When it was almost enough, Luxi Chan nodded. He has made so many sacrifices for the spread of the Tianquan Soul Lock formation, yet there has been no corresponding reward within the alliance. It really shouldn't be. Continuing like this, wouldn't it disappoint cultivators throughout the world? Wang Fu and Dongfang were both astute individuals. Hearing Luxi Chief's implication, they were surprised but dared not speak up. They only heard her continue, if I were unaware, it would be fine. But now that I have personally seen it, I definitely can't ignore it. However, this is ultimately a matter of stepping in for someone else. It would be troublesome if it causes misunderstandings and rumors. At this critical moment, our 10,000 Immortals Alliance should be united from top to bottom. Do you two have any good ideas? Suddenly, the two remembered some rumors they occasionally heard, and after a little thought, they understood the meaning behind Luxi Chief's words. However, such high-level struggles were not something they, as small pawns, could get involved in. They felt helpless. Feeling the continuous scrutiny from Luxi Chan, both of them felt an indescribable pressure. It's unreasonable to remain silent when the leader asks. With sweat breaking out on their foreheads, at a critical moment, Wang Fu suddenly remembered his conversation with Li Fan before. With a sudden inspiration, he gritted his teeth and said, to let the chief know, subordinates have had several heart-to-heart conversations with Li Fan before. Although his lifespan is nearing its end, he is still willing to dedicate himself until his last moment. Our 10,000 Immortals Alliance has never mistreated those who have merits. However, despite his efforts, he is still ranked around 40 to 50. If we were to give him special treatment, other cultivators ranked higher than him might have objections. If his ranking were slightly higher, it would be more reasonable. Wang Fu paused for a moment, then continued, this person once mentioned to me privately that although he has no regrets in death, he regrets not being able to explore the many wonders of our 10,000 Immortals Alliance. This sudden remark seemed to come out of nowhere. However, Luxi Chan and Dongfang Yaoyao, who were familiar with the rules of the Great Comparison Golden List, naturally understood the hidden meaning behind his words. That's actually a good idea. Luxi Chan nodded slightly, acknowledging Wang Fu's suggestion. Wang Fu couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Before he could relax, he heard Luxi Chief ask again. Do you have any recommended places to go? Wang Fu's heart tensed up again for a moment. In a split second, recalling Li Fan's words from before, Wang Fu had no choice but to grit his teeth and say, the five elements Grand Celestial, Endless Sea, and other secret realms, subordinates believe these are good choices. Talk. Next chapter.